Good morning, everybody. As y'all are coming in, locations in the comments. Tell me your locations in the comments. Tell me your locations as y'all are coming in. Hope everyone's had a great start to your Thursday, September 25th, 2025. We will never have another one of these. Thursday, September 25th, 2025. Tell me your locations as y'all are coming in. Tap the screen, like the live as y'all are coming in. Like the live, tap the screen. Tap the screen to like the live and put your locations in the comments. We are going to get started in a few minutes. We are live on Rumble. Good morning, Rumble, live on YouTube. Good morning, YouTube. If YouTube Studio could actually broadcast to Rumble and X and LinkedIn, then I would use YouTube Studio. But YouTube doesn't have that capability. It only lets you broadcast just straight to YouTube. So I use Rumble Studio for now. Over on X, we are live. We are live also on LinkedIn. My name on LinkedIn and X and YouTube and Rumble is at Dre All Day. If you're looking, just look up Dre All Day. That's the name on those platforms. If you are a Facebook user, my Facebook page is Facebook/Work on Your Game University. Facebook/Work on Your Game University. On Instagram, we are live there as well. That is at Dre Baldwin, and we are live on TikTok at Work on Your Game. Any app you want to find me, if you just look up my name, Dre Baldwin, that's DRE, last name Baldwin, or you look up Work on Your Game, I can be found, so you don't have to know the exact name. Just look up Dre Baldwin or Work on Your Game, and you will find my page if I was to go in Google myself right now on any one of these apps. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to type in Dre Baldwin, and I'm going to type in Rumble. Let's see if it comes up. It says the third day. Actually, an interview that I did comes up on Rumble. Then, an interview comes up when I do that. Public Intel Report, Rumble. Rumble has a thing called the Public Intel Report. I've never heard of this.
There's a lot of noise out there.
Oh, that's not the Public Intel Report. That's somebody's podcast. It's somebody else's podcast I was on. Another podcast I was on. So a lot of people use Rumble for their shows. So actually, if you look up Dre Baldwin Rumble, what you'll see is a whole bunch of other people's platforms, and here it is. So you will find me on Rumble. Actually, that's somebody else. Somebody else took one of my videos and published it to Rumble, which I don't even mind. If you look me up on Rumble, you'll find me there. So if you look up Dre Baldwin, let's see. I'm doing a little experiment here just to see if what I just told you is true. If you look up my name on these platforms, do I come up? You go to YouTube and type in, you Google Dre Baldwin in the word YouTube, I do come up. You type in Dre Baldwin Facebook, let's see. Facebook Dre Baldwin. It says Facebook Dre Baldwin, but we got to tap on this page and see what page this is. That looks like my personal page comes up. We're looking for the business page. There it is. Yes. So if you type in Dre Baldwin Facebook on Google, it does come up. I'm actually using DuckDuckGo. Give me your locations in the comments, folks. Locations in the comments. Type in Dre Baldwin Instagram. It comes up immediately. Type in Dre Baldwin TikTok. It comes up. So, as I said, all right, type in my name in any social platform. I'm pretty easy to find. Give me your locations in the comments here, folks. Let me shout out a few people in the comments before we get started. Today, we are talking about ICE. ICE, ICE. Not the ice that you keep in the freezer, but the people who are enforcing customs, immigration and customs in America, because they are coming under a whole lot of heat. Even more so now, because a lot of people have decided, well, I'll explain in a moment, but a lot of people have framed them as negative. And there's a specific reason why. It's not because of the actual work that they're doing. We'll get into that in a minute. Murphy the Muck, good morning. Congrats on the first comment. Bristol, Tennessee. Carol Ann Collins from Newburgh, New York. Carla, Indiana, good morning. Annie AFF, good morning from Kentucky. Quail Ridge from Northern California, 140.6 from Walnut Creek, California. The Teresa Trinker. Is that Teresa Trinker from Southwest Michigan? Good morning. Courtney checking in from Nashville. Rex from Los Angeles. Regina Faith from Hagerstown, Maryland. Carla said, grab your daily heart me. Yes, grab your daily heart me. I don't even know what that means, but do it. Daphne W. from South Carolina. MAGA Mama from Detroit, Michigan. Why not revenue? Why not revenue? ICE in danger, that a threat? ICE is in danger, right? ICE has been endangered. We're going to talk about that. Giga Dad, good morning. J Guz 209, thanks for the follow. Cure Fans SC, from Connecticut. Good morning. Lacey River, good morning. Happiness Now from the ATL, good morning. Kuya Ben Yashara Manson, North Carolina. Ashley, good morning from South Carolina. Jeremy Diesel, thank you for the follow. 11 Bravo, good morning. Marky Man, Sacramento. Tim Rockwell, New York. Dean Dangerous says, host says he isn't MAGA. I haven't said anything about MAGA all day yet today. Dwayne Mitchell, so you already get an award early in the day. We haven't even gotten to the content yet, but you get an award early in the day.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Dwayne Mitchell, Detroit is in the house. Brandon Tessner, Alabama. Diablo Do Burma, 72. Cary, North Carolina. Boogie from D.C. 11 Bravo SC checking in. Amber Johnston, good morning. Mark Gonzalez from Utah. Shout out to Utah in the building. User 748, hello from San Antonio. Karen Bishop from Gadsden, Alabama. Gary Gray, good morning from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Vicky Mitchell, 76, checking in from Southwestern PA, Steelers Nation. That is Steelers Nation. Shout out to Southwestern Pennsylvania. I can confirm that's Steelers Nation. Amber Johnston from Nebraska, good morning. Vibes with Great X from Greensboro, North Carolina. So the topic here today, we're talking about ICE. ICE is in more and more danger from now. It looks like they're in danger from citizens based on some things that have been framed politically. Let's explain exactly what that is. So what happened actually yesterday is that there was a deadly shooting at a Dallas ICE facility. So those who know what ICE is, those are the people who are enforcing immigration and customs. That's Tom Holman, Kristi Noem, and company, all under the direction of President Donald Trump, to go and find people who are in this country without proper documentation, find them, gather them, detain them, and get them kicked the hell out of the country, which is literally the law. That's not Donald Trump's idea. That's literally the law. If you don't have proper documentation, you can't be here. If and when you get found, you get detained momentarily. That's your due process. And then the goal is to kick you the hell out and not let you come back. So there's an ICE facility in Dallas that there was a deadly shooting that happened there recently. And now there are more fears about what people are labeling as politically motivated violence. Is not necessarily done by a politician, but politically motivated violence. So what happened is a gunman fired into the building. A detainee got shot. Now, a lot of people don't know that this is what happened. So the gunman fires into the building, and they shot one of the people that I don't know, who knows why the gunman's fired. We don't know. And I'll tell you why we don't know, why we'll never know in a moment. Gunman fires into the building. One of the detainees, that's a person who got rounded up by ICE, possibly to be, first being detained and then possibly to be deported, possibly. This person got killed. So they killed the detainee and they critically wounded two other people. Then the shooter took care of themselves. They turned the gun on themselves. So now they're dead. So we'll never know the real reason why they did it, because we can only go off of what they said, and then they can't talk. Dead men can't talk, as they say. Excuse me. Authorities described the attack as, excuse me, they described it as indiscriminate. And they saw a spent shell casing that said anti-ICE on it, and it was found nearby. I find this very interesting now that shooters are shooting and now they're writing things on the shell casings. Like this is the new ice bucket challenge. Now go shoot somebody and write something on the shell casing to give a clue as to what you did and why you did it. Why all of a sudden this is allegedly what's happening. So allegedly it says anti-ICE on the shell casing, allegedly found nearby, and it raises questions about anti-immigration extremism. Anti-immigration extremism. This is an interesting term right there. Let me say that term one more time. Anti-immigration extremism. Does that even make sense? Give me a yes or no in the comments. Does that term even make sense? I never considered this term. Anti-immigration extremism. I said it for the fourth time. That term doesn't seem to make sense to me. Anti-immigration extremism. Anti-immigration. Well, it depends on how you frame it. What kind of immigration are we talking? I would have to ask a question before I can answer it. What kind of immigration are we talking? Are we talking legal immigration or are we talking illegal immigration? Illegal immigration, you should be extreme in being anti that, because illegal immigration is illegal by definition. Now, legal immigration. You don't have to be against that. But extremism, yes, you should be very extreme in enforcing the law. So we're talking about the law. So this is one of those tricky terms there. It depends on how somebody is using it. And people are questioning whether or not this was a target ideological act. And again, how will we ever know because the shooter is dead? Now, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, he condemned the violence, of course. He called for calmer rhetoric and stronger protections for federal personnel. And I agree with Ted Cruz on that. Now, whether that's actually going to happen is we don't know. Now, DHS, that's the Department of Homeland Security. That's Kristi Noem. They have launched an investigation into whether this connects to broader unrest and extremist networks. So what we're going to discuss here today is the conversation around how people are feeling about immigration in America, number one, the immigration enforcement, number two, how people on certain sides of the political aisle have framed immigration enforcement in America, especially under the current administration, which is why it's even a topic right now, because immigration enforcement has always existed. ICE is not some new organization. It has always existed. It's just that people are super excited, and excitement does not have to be positive. It can be negative. People are super excited and talking about ICE these days because of who the president is and the way that the president, Donald Trump, has framed his campaigns from 2016 to a little bit of 2020 and definitely 2024 around enforcing immigration laws and enforcing the border, and people kind of not feeling the fact that he was doing that for whatever reason, many reasons that we already know about. We'll probably touch on a few of them here today, and whether this makes sense or not. Let me introduce myself. For those who don't know me, my name is Dre Baldwin. Many know me as Dre all day. I'm a former 9-year pro athlete, author of a few books, on a few TEDx talks. I run this company called Work on Your Game Incorporated. Our job here is to help you weaponize discipline, performance, and execution so that you have command of the room and a presence that makes people notice you, feel you, and remember you, even if they never talk to you. You can learn more about working with me by going to the links in my bio or profile or the pinned comments that you see on whatever app you are on right now. TikTok recently allowed you to expand the bio. The bio used to give you only a few characters. Now they expanded it so it's bigger. So I'll put more information in the bio. So those of you who are watching me on TikTok, to get into my texting community, you can just text me at the number that you see in my bio, and I'll tell you what to send to me as well. Text the word live to me. All of you can see that on all the other apps. Text the word live to my number, 305-384-6894, and you'll get a link to all the stuff that I may mention or may not even get around to mentioning here in this live stream right now. So let's get into this topic, then we'll get into the conversation. So it is critical. Again, what is ICE? Let's see if we can get just some background information on who exactly ICE is so that we're all on the same page. What is ICE as in, I'm looking it up on ChatGPT. Explain their function and origin. All right, so we'll all be on the same page as far as what ICE is. I mean, we already do know. I already gave y'all a pretty good understanding of who they are, but let's just look into ICE as an organization so we're all on the same page, exactly what we're talking about when we talk about ICE, because you hear a lot of people talking about it. Of course, you have the Trump administration talking about them. Then you get the politicians who are trying to make ICE look bad and make it seem like ICE is doing the wrong thing because they're literally enforcing the law. So here's a breakdown of ICE. So ICE stands for the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So they're just shortened called ICE, ICE. It's a federal law enforcement agency under the Department of Homeland Security. So they're under, ICE is under DHS. Department of Homeland Security controls ICE. It was created in 2003. Everybody remembers why stuff got created in 2003. So after 9/11, a lot of Americans were afraid and nervous, but just generally scared after the terrorist attacks. And under the George W. Bush administration, a lot of new organizations such as the TSA, y'all know the TSA where you got to go through and get the pat downs and take your shoes off, or at least you used to. Those people got created around this time. DHS got created around this time. ICE got created around this time. And all these things really, if we're being honest here, they are infringing upon the rights and the freedoms of American citizens. Now, we're not talking about that in this context, but all of these things, the TSA, DHS, ICE, and many other things, a lot of surveillance that goes on in America got created under the guise of we're trying to protect you and keep you safe. So we got to watch over you even more. You got to give up some of your freedom to get more security. That's really what all of these organizations did. They're not going to go away because a lot of Americans would rather feel safe than have complete 100% freedoms. A lot of people don't know what 100% freedom even feels or looks like, or even has even come close to having it. And we've given up a whole lot of our freedoms over the last 20 plus years after 9/11, all under the premise of this is going to make us more safe, so it's okay to give up our freedoms. I actually am not in favor of that, but this is where we are right now. That's what's actually happened over the last 25 years. And a lot of Americans don't even realize that that's the situation. So in 2003, the Homeland Security Act, which was passed in 2002, as part of the reorganization of federal agencies after 9/11. So after 9/11, the government reorganized a whole bunch of federal agencies. A whole bunch of Americans were afraid. And while everybody was afraid and willing to give up basically any amount of freedom in order to feel safe and make sure 9/11 didn't happen again, the government went and created all of these organizations that basically took away a whole lot of our rights and a whole lot of our freedoms and a whole lot of our privacy. And again, a lot of people were completely okay with this, to the point that now here we are 20 plus years later and nobody's even questioning it. But again, different conversation for a different day. Now, what it did, this Homeland Security Act, it merged parts of the old Immigration and Naturalization Service, that's the INS, that's what it used to be called, and the U.S. Customs Service, and it merged them into a single force. That single force became Department of Homeland Security and ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Department of Homeland Security sounds like something that Americans will want, because of course you're going to be safe on your homeland, right? After 9/11, who doesn't want to be safe on their homeland? Yeah, that sounds good. Again, I've told you all the time, good reason, real reason. Good reason is we want y'all to feel safe. Real reason is we want to spy on everybody. They already wanted to do this. The government already wanted to look into your business and know everything that you were doing. They just needed a convenient excuse to do it that you were okay with. The convenient excuse to do it that you were okay with was 9/11 and the threat of 9/11 happening again. That's what happened in 2001 going into 2003. So they merged this into a single force to handle immigration enforcement, customs investigations, and removals, which generally is a good idea. Now, ICE is not a border patrol agency. So ICE is not standing down there in Texas walking alongside the border. That is handled by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, also known as CBP, and the U.S. Coast Guard. ICE, on the other hand, handles interior enforcement, investigations, detention, and removal. So CBP is the guys walking along the border, making sure you don't come across if you're not supposed to, or if it's the Biden-Harris administration, letting you come across when you're not supposed to. That's a joke, but it's not a joke. And ICE are the people who are on the interior watching what's happening. And if you are on the interior already, somehow, some way, whether it was under the Trump administration and you snuck past CBP, or it was the Biden administration and they waved to you while you walked through the border without proper documentation. Either way, ICE is going to try to come find you and get rid of you. At least ostensibly, that's their job. Okay, so that is what ICE is. Now, the major divisions and functions, ICE has two primary operational arms. One is Department of Homeland Security investigates transnational crimes such as human trafficking, smuggling, et cetera, et cetera. Then you have enforcement and removal operations known as ERO. They identify, detain, and remove undocumented people who are in violation of immigration laws. That's Tom Homan. Those are the people that everybody's fighting against. Well, half of America is fighting against right now is ERO, Enforcement and Removal Operations. Then you have the Office of Principal Legal Advisor. That's called OPLA. They provide legal counsel, litigation, and represent ICE in immigration removal procedures. In other words, these are the prosecutors that argue that this guy, the Maryland man, needs to be deported out of the country. That's OPLA. Then you have the Office of Professional Responsibility, also known as OPR. They do internal oversight, ethics investigation, and administrative support functions. So y'all want to know why the government is so bloated? Listen to what I'm saying to you right now. This is just ICE, what I'm describing here. Now, they enforce more than 400 federal statutes, 400 federal statutes related to customs, immigration, trade, border integrity, and public safety. Their mission is to promote homeland security, there's that term again, and public safety, pay attention, public safety, through enforcement of immigration and customs laws. They're not lying. I'm just saying that they use these terms to make you okay with anything and everything that they do. Some things you may be okay with, but other things you don't even know that they're doing. Now, they have civil and criminal authorities, meaning ICE agents can carry out criminal investigations. Okay, so they basically can take you to court. Now, there's a lot of criticisms of ICE. I'm not going to get into that. So let's get back to my points here. Now, it is critical to protect ICE agents doing their legally authorized jobs without vilification or threats. And we would have to say that the political left is responsible for this right now. Would you all agree? Give me a yes or a no. Question that I'm asking is the vilification against ICE right now, has that come from the left or has that come from the right? I'm saying it came from the left. Is that true? Give me a yes if you believe that's true. If you believe any vilification of ICE, or if there is none at all, you think it came from anywhere other than the political left, put no in the comments. Give me a yes or a no. The vilification currently of ICE, the way that ICE is looked at negatively in the world today, is that based on the political left or is it not? I say yes, it is. Now, here's the reason why the political left is going so hard against ICE. It's two reasons. One reason is one main reason, then there's a sub reason that connects to the main reason. The main reason is, of course, the current president, Donald J. Trump. They don't like Donald Trump. Donald Trump's campaigns in 2016 and 2024 were all based around, we're going to enforce the border and we're going to get illegals out of the country. Everybody knows that that's what Donald Trump's been about from the beginning. That was labeled pejoratively as he is xenophobic, which means he doesn't like people from other cultures and other backgrounds. Also racism, and he's just a complete bigot, and he only cares about old, rich, white, heterosexual men. All right, that's been the frame around Donald Trump for the last 10 years. He hasn't really tried that hard to fight against it. I don't believe it's true, but he hasn't tried that hard to fight against it, and the left they have succeeded in putting that label on him and getting a bunch of people to agree with it. So because of this, anything that ICE does and removing illegal immigrants from the country, most of whom are not old, rich, white, heterosexual men, it looks like, oh, that's exactly what Donald Trump, the negative things they said about Donald Trump. Of course. Will reveal us over there on Instagram. Diebler Brent, I see you on Instagram. So that's one reason why that ICE is getting vilified, because ICE right now, again, ICE has existed since George W. Bush. So Obama had access to ICE. The first Trump, Biden, and now Trump all had access to ICE. But all of a sudden, ICE is this terrible organization, even though they've existed for 20 years. All right, go figure. And the reason is because Donald Trump. And they want to make Donald Trump look bad. And in addition to coming on the heels of the Biden-Harris administration, which basically did not enforce the border or our immigration laws at all. They knocked down a bunch of executive orders that Trump had in place. So let me explain this to you all. I've explained this before, but some of you haven't heard me explain it. When Donald Trump became president in 2016, the first thing he did was he signed a bunch of executive orders, which are basically ways that the president can push things through without having to go through Congress. He signed a bunch of executive orders that strongly enforced the laws at the border. Actually, let me say that more clearly. What he did was sign a bunch of executive orders that told people who worked for him, federal government, to enforce the laws at the border more stringently than they had been being enforced before him. That he signed a bunch of executive orders that basically made that happen. So when Donald Trump ran in 2016 and said, I'm going to enforce the borders, we're going to get people out of the country, we're going to stop all this illegal immigration, he did it through executive orders as soon as he became president. And those executive orders stayed in place throughout his first term. When Joe Biden became president in 2021, after the hotly contested 2020 election, what happened is Joe Biden signed a bunch of executive orders that basically eliminated Donald Trump's executive orders. That's what he did. He signed a bunch of executive orders in his first 30 days in office. This is Biden, that eliminated all the EOs, that's executive orders that Donald Trump had in place. And basically what that created was a very porous and open southern border that told the people, CBP and others, to basically relax and not enforce our laws and our rules at the border nearly as strongly as they have been being enforced under Donald Trump, which again are laws on the books. So the border became very wide open and very porous, and the laws weren't being enforced and rules weren't being enforced, and you could basically just come across and do what you wanted. So for the next 3 years, 2021, 2022, 2023, and half of 2024, the border was pretty much open. And according to, depending on who you ask, anywhere between 12 and 20 million people came into our country without proper official documentation, visa, or going through the process that many of you or maybe your family members had to go through if they wanted to come even visit the United States of America, let alone move here. That happened under the Biden administration. Now, in the middle of 2024, let's say about June, it becomes clear that Donald Trump is the nominee for president in 2024. So Donald Trump starts doing the same thing he did in 2016. He said, these people are doing crazy things with the border. I'm going to use that against them, and I'm going to leverage that against them during my campaign. Donald Trump started making a whole bunch of noise about the border for the campaign. He has this disastrous, not him. He has a normal debate against a disastrous performance by Joe Biden. Everybody remembers that. That was the swan song of Joe Biden's political career. Joe Biden looks terrible in that debate. He gets replaced by Kamala Harris. So Donald Trump goes on doing the same thing, bashing the border, and then going even harder on Kamala Harris because Kamala Harris was allegedly the border czar. You remember that term, the border czar? And Kamala Harris tried to distance herself from the term and say she wasn't the border czar because she understood, by even trying to distance herself from the label of being the border czar, it was clear that she understood that whoever was in charge of that border during the Biden-Harris administration was going to look bad. She didn't want it to be her. So she tried to claim that she wasn't the border czar. And then Kamala, trying to do some damage control, she goes to Congress and she tries to get Congress to create a bipartisan border bill. Y'all remember the bipartisan border bill? If you don't remember it, just go listen to Kamala Harris in the summer of 2024 because you couldn't stop saying it. Bipartisan border bill. We got a bipartisan border bill. All that means, for those who don't know what that means that they got a bill through Congress that both Democrats and enough Republicans were okay with to push it up to possibly get signed by the president, or at least they thought they were close to doing so. They thought they had enough votes. Of course, the Democrats were all okay with it because the bipartisan border bill was an idea of the Biden-Harris administration. So, and they're Democrats. So they got all the Democrats in Congress to go along with it. And they needed to get some of the Republicans in Congress, not all, but some of them to go along with it too. They got enough of them to go along with it. The bill would have gotten through the votes in Congress. It would have got to the desk of Joe Biden. Joe Biden could have signed it. And then they would have had allegedly a quote unquote strong border, which again, only reason the border was weak is because Joe Biden signed a bunch of executive orders that said, let's loosen up the border. He literally did this on purpose. So now they come up with a bill in the middle of 2024, 3.5 years into his administration, that all of a sudden now we're going to enforce the laws at the border, which is completely ridiculous. And again, 30 years ago, government got away with this stuff. They don't get away with it now because you have people on social media, YouTube, podcasting, TikTok, etc., that can point out this nonsense. This is what happened. So the bipartisan border bill, they're trying to get all the votes. Donald Trump, allegedly, according to Kamala Harris, you can decide whether or not you want to believe Kamala Harris. According to Kamala Harris, Donald Trump made a few phone calls to his friends in Congress, i.e. Republicans who were going to support this bipartisan border bill, and he got them to change their mind, not support the bipartisan border bill. Therefore, the bill never made it through Congress. Therefore, it never got to the desk of Joe Biden's auto pen. Therefore, his auto pen couldn't sign it. Therefore, it can never become a law. So Donald Trump continued to hammer Kamala Harris on this border situation. And in their debate and in their back and forth through the media and advertising through the rest of 2024's campaign, Kamala Harris kept saying, we had a bipartisan border bill. We had a bipartisan border bill. We had a bipartisan border bill. Donald Trump called his friends in Congress to kill the bill so that he could use it as part of his campaign messaging to make us look bad, to say that we were being porous on the border. And here's what I say. I think she was telling the truth. Now, I don't think Kamala Harris is a very competent person. I don't think she's a very good communicator. I do not think she ever has a chance of making it through a Democratic primary. But in this situation, Kamala was actually telling the truth. I believe that is the truth. That happened. That the Democrats realize, oh, shit, we're going to look terrible in the election cycle if Donald Trump starts hammering us on the border, which he clearly was about to do. Let's go get a bill so we can at least, anytime he brings up how terrible the border is, we can say, well, look at this bill. And Donald Trump said, damn, if they do that, they'll be able to say, look at this bill. So let me make sure the bill doesn't happen. So what he did was make a few phone calls to his people in Congress and get them to not support the bill so the bill could never go through, so he could keep hammering them and he could leverage that during the election. This is a whole Machiavellian plot by both Donald Trump and the Democratic Party, and they both were playing against each other, and Donald Trump ended up winning, and they got rid of the bill, and Donald Trump hammered them on this, and this is part of the reason why, not the whole reason, but part of the reason why he won in 2024. Because the Democrats looked terrible when it came to the border. And they should look terrible because they were allowing people to just come across the border and they were not enforcing the rules. This is true. They didn't enforce the rules for 3.5 years. So even if that bill had passed, that would not make up for what they had done during that 3.5 years. While at the same time, you got to keep in mind, the average person has a very short attention span and doesn't understand any of these details that I just explained. And if Kamala Harris had been able to say, look at this law that we just passed about enforcing the border, what are you talking about, Donald Trump? That would have worked to mitigate anything Donald Trump would have said. So Donald Trump understood this pretty well. Kamala understood it too. Donald Trump just happened to win. They were both doing the right thing in terms of winning the political game. It's just Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris, which wasn't the first time, wasn't the last that Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris. So this all happened when it came to the border. And another thing about that border bill, by the way, for those of you who don't pay that much attention to what happens in Congress, anytime Congress passes a bill and they get it to the desk of the president to possibly be signed into law, you have to understand that there's often a whole bunch of other things inside of that bill, commonly known as pork, P-O-R-K. Those are the extra things that are inside the bill that don't get announced on TV. So if you want to know what's actually in any bill that Congress passes, understand that you as an American citizen has a right to this information. You can find it online, and you can go to the websites where these bills are published, because they are required to publish these, because people who work in Congress work for you, by the way. They work for us, that we are not their employees. They are our employees. Anything that they do, every law and bill and measure that they pass, we get to read it if you have the patience to read them. And it shows you everything that goes into it. So if that bill would have got signed into law, had it made it to Joe Biden's desk in his auto pen, then a whole bunch of other things would have happened besides we're going to enforce the border, because all Joe Biden had to do was to enforce the laws at the border was what? All he had to do was bring back the executive orders that Donald Trump had in place. They didn't have to go through Congress for that. Donald Trump didn't go through Congress to enforce the border when he became president in 2017, excuse me. All he did was sign a bunch of executive orders. He did that unilaterally, and we voted for him, so he was allowed to. Joe Biden relaxed the laws at the border unilaterally because he was the president. We voted for him. He could do what he wants to do. All he had to do was the exact same thing all over again. What do you need the bill for? And a lot of people never ask that question. Why do you need a bipartisan border bill when the only reason that the border is so porous right now is because of executive orders? All you got to do, Joe or Jill, whoever it was signing those executive orders, is just make more executive orders and enforce the border. That's all you got to do. Here's what was in the bill. It was a whole bunch of money going overseas to that country that starts with the letter U. Inside that very bill, that bipartisan border bill, the majority of the money that would have been earmarked in that bill was going to the Ukraine. Again, y'all go look it up, read it yourself. Tell me if I got it wrong. Y'all can go look it up and read it yourself. You can fact check me on that. That's one of the reasons why the bill didn't pass. And Kamala Harris tried to frame this. And again, this is Kamala doing what she's supposed to do as a politician. This is not really a knock personally on Kamala. She just happened to be the mouthpiece for this. But Joe Biden would have did the same thing. Barack Obama would have did the same thing. They framed it as if this bill was designed for the border when it really wasn't. It was really designed to give money to a bunch of other things that had nothing to do with the border. And some of the money was going to go to the border. But again, you could have signed executive orders to enforce the border. They didn't do it. Continuing. So the reason, going back to what I was saying here, the reason why ICE has been vilified is because the political left, they have decided that they're going to frame anything Donald Trump does as negative. One of Donald Trump's main things was enforcing the border. So ICE is part of his enforcement of not necessarily the border, it's really enforcement of immigration, because the border is CBP. The immigration is ICE. They're the people who catch people on the inside. CBP catches you when you try to come across the border. ICE catches you once you already got across. So they're trying to frame anything Donald Trump is involved in as negative, and they just come up with the most negative and emotionally triggering framing of anything Donald Trump does, and then they just say it over and over and over again until people believe it, and then we get to this point, and that's where we're at. And the political left does a very good job of this. They do a very good job of negative emotional framing of anything involving Donald Trump. Give me a yes or no if you agree with that. That the political left does a great job of negatively, emotionally framing anything and everything Donald Trump does. I think they are excellent at it. They've done a great job of it for 10 years. And the only reason why it is not as effective as they want it to be, is because Donald Trump is not your normal politician. Every single politician we've had over the last 40 years, from H.W. Bush to Clinton, or let's just say the presidents, H.W. Bush to Clinton to W. Bush to Barack to Biden, if they were being negatively, emotionally framed the way Donald Trump has been framed, I don't mean framed like framed for a crime, but the framing of his messaging. If they were being framed this negatively on any subject, the thing that all of them do, every politician does, and even the ones in the future will do, is fight back against it. They would come out and they would try to counter message the negative message. You put a negative message out about me, I'm going to counter message that with something that pushes back against that and knocks down the narrative. And they would fight against the narrative. And they would fight on narrative. Here's the thing with Donald Trump. He doesn't fight the narrative. He just left it there. And that's the reason why the left is in such shambles right now, because they don't know how to deal with somebody who doesn't react every time they put a negative frame on the things that he does. Donald Trump has generally just left it there. He hasn't fought back against any of this stuff. They say Donald Trump's racist, he's xenophobic, he's misogynistic, he only cares about old rich white men. Donald Trump hasn't really said much to counter any of those arguments. Now, I don't believe them to be true, but he doesn't really try to fight back against them. He just leaves it there. He just moves on as if it didn't even happen. And politicians are used to, when you throw something negative at your opponent tries to throw something negative at you, and then y'all just argue, y'all catfight over the negativity. Donald Trump just doesn't engage. So the political left's problem is they're like, why the hell is he not responding? We keep saying all this negative stuff about him. He's not saying anything back. And they're like, okay, well, we keep saying negative stuff. Eventually, all the citizens are going to hear the negative stuff, and they're going to not like him because of the negative stuff we kept saying. And they said, okay, wait until election day. Then on election day, he keeps winning. And they're like, all right, what the hell are we supposed to do with this? All right, this is why the left is stuck right now, because they have no idea what to do when someone doesn't respond like a normal politician, because Donald Trump is not a normal politician. Everybody understands this. This is why we are where we are. ICE just happens to be a sub point of this whole situation. They don't know what to do because he's not reacting, again, like any other politician would react. Again, look at Kamala Harris when they said negative things about her. Look at Joe Biden. Look at Barack Obama. They all respond. Trump doesn't respond. He ignores it. Now, critics argue that ICE itself, actually, let me make sure I said everything I want to say here in the first point. Okay, so critics argue that ICE itself carries policies and practices that have hurt communities, so strong public scrutiny and dissent are part of democratic checks, not necessarily an incitement. Okay. Now, is it okay for everyday citizens to have a problem with something that some branch of the government is doing, up to and including ICE? I say yes. If you're a citizen and you don't like what ICE is doing, you have a right to voice your disappointment, disagreement, dissatisfaction, whatever. You can protest. Peaceful gathering to protest is in the Constitution. You're allowed to do that. The issue is when they say ICE is hurting communities, what exactly do you mean? How is ICE hurting a community? And it depends on what community we're talking here. If there's someone in your community who is in this country without proper documentation, and ICE comes and grabs that person and carries them away, and maybe their family goes with them because they decide they want to leave too because they don't want dad to be the only one who gets deported, and now that person's no longer in the community, and that guy was your friend and used to play dominoes with him on Friday nights and drink beer, and now he's not in the community anymore, and you frame that as hurting the community, I say, okay, well, ICE hurt the community. But at the same time, we have laws in place. So which one is more important? Saving your community or enforcing the law? I say enforcing the law. So it depends on what you mean by hurt a community. This is another one of those tricky words that y'all got to be careful of when people throw these around these days. When it comes to hurt, harm, these words they can trick you. They can emotionally blackmail you with these words. You are hurting the community. Okay, well, is it a community full of undocumented immigrants? Okay, we're going to hurt that community. Why? Because that's the law. The law says without proper documentation, you have to go. So if I pull 10 people out of this community and the community is hurt because y'all liked those 10 guys, I say, I'm sorry that you are disappointed that these people are no longer here. However, we do have laws on the books. You are an American citizen. You like the law, right? Okay, you like law and order. You like the fact that we have laws in place. Okay, this is one of the laws. These people who you like happen to have been violating the law. So if somebody you like violates the law and they face a legal penalty for violating the law, you can be hurt all you want. That does not mean that I'm doing something wrong by enforcing the laws on the books. And again, this is why y'all got to be careful with this language that people use, because they'll try to blackmail you with this. Don't you think it's wrong? Don't you think it's wrong that ICE is hurting the community? I'm like, well, what do you mean? Again, this is the tricky language. I'll tell you another anecdote. Again, this is one I've shared before. I'll share it again because some of you haven't heard it. So I was sitting outside in Brickell about 4 or 5 years ago. I didn't have a suit on then. This is white t-shirt, basketball shorts. And this woman walks up to me. They're doing these street interviews. It was actually a guy walked up first. He said, you want to do one of these interviews? And I said, sure. I think he was kind of surprised that I said yes. Now, the person doing the interview was a woman. Very first question she asked, she said, do you think it's, I can't remember exactly how she worded it, but she said, do you think it's okay that billionaires pay less in taxes than the rest of us? That was the question. Do you think it's unfair that billionaires pay less in taxes than the rest of us? And I said, no, it's not unfair. There's a tax code. My answer was, there's a tax code that says, here's how much you pay based on this, this, and this, and this. And if a billionaire, quote unquote, first thing I said to her, actually, let me back up. First thing I said to her was, how you know I'm not a billionaire? Because she didn't know who I was. She said, billionaires pay less in taxes than the rest of us. So she was putting me in a group of non-billionaires, and she didn't know me. So my first question was, how you know I'm not a billionaire? Then she said, are you a billionaire? I said, no. Then she asked the question again. And then I said, well, the tax code allows people to take breaks and be able to not pay taxes based on what's written on the books. So if the laws of the tax code says you don't pay taxes if you can maneuver your money in this way, then all these people are doing is playing the game. And if they play the game the right way based on the laws on the books, and they have every right to keep as much of their money as they want to, and if other people can't play that game or they don't play that game and they end up paying more of their money in taxes, then whose fault is that? That's nobody's fault. That's just the laws that are on the books. And this woman was, I don't know if she was white. She was either white or like a white Latin. Down here in South Florida, you see these people who look like they're white, but they're actually Latin. But she was very fair skinned. And I'm bringing that up to say this. When I gave her that answer, I could tell by the flush red on her face that this is not the answer that she was expecting. And as soon as I gave the answer, I said, no way they're ever going to put this interview out on their Instagram. And they never put the interview out on Instagram. And she asked me a few more questions that I knew this video was never coming out. The whole point of me bringing that up is you got to be careful with the way people language things. And the way she framed that question is actually what we call a loaded question. And we have our soundboard for that. That's the sound for the loaded question. The loaded question was her saying, isn't it unfair that billionaires pay less in taxes than the rest of us? So she's kind of leading me towards a certain answer. And again, what the hell are you doing a street interview for if you're going to get everybody to say the same thing? It was a false question. It was a poorly worded question because she wasn't really trying to get my objective answer. She was really just trying to push me in one way so they're basically trying to create propaganda is what it was. Now, it wasn't by the government, but that's what she was trying to do. I'm bringing that up to help you all understand this is the kind of stuff that people do these days. And if you're not aware of the way people play around with words, then you can be easily manipulated by smart people with bad intentions. Now, continuing. A casing marked anti-ICE, allegedly from this shooter, indicates that this was not just random violence. It suggests that ideology is in play, making this an example of how demonizing political rhetoric can escalate into lethal acts. Now, I'm a little bit torn on this concept. On one hand, I understand that if you keep saying negative things about a certain group, a certain person, a certain side politically, that it may agitate or influence some crazy person who has no logical, rational control of their mind to go do something crazy because they keep hearing these negative things, this negative rhetoric you say about this person. You keep saying Donald Trump's a fascist and he's going to destroy democracy and put black people back in chains and roll back the gains of everybody LGBTQ and female. Is only going to help straight white men and everybody else is going to be subservient to them. And you don't want that to happen. And you keep hearing it on TV from credible sources, even from politicians, that you may eventually say, you know what, I got to do something and take matters into my own hands and get rid of Donald Trump so he can't do more bad stuff to me. I understand that, yes, there is a way you can draw a line from that to that. That the shooter of Charlie Kirk 2 weeks ago was probably heard a whole bunch of negative rhetoric around the things that Charlie Kirk said and maybe disagreed with a lot of things Charlie said himself and decided, you know what, this guy is so bad and he's going so far that I have to do something and take matters into my own hands to stop this guy because what he's saying and doing is actually hurtful and harmful to me and people like me. I understand that you can draw that line. At the same time, on the other hand, and I'll put this at about a 40-60. 40% of me understands that, but 60% of me says every individual is still responsible for their own behavior, regardless of what somebody said to you before you did it. Regardless of what you heard on TV, regardless of how many times you heard it, you are still responsible for your own actions individually. So while I do believe, let's just say Charlie Kirk, the Charlie Kirk shooter, I do believe he was probably listening to something on Instagram or TikTok or social media that told him Charlie Kirk is terrible and that he's anti-LGBTQ. And this guy was clearly LGBTQ or at least leaning in that direction because he's dating a guy who is a boy turned into a girl. It was not even a real thing. And do I believe that he was influenced by that? I say yes, probably. If you had to ask me to bet, yes, he was probably influenced by that. At the same time, millions of people hear that stuff. They don't go grab a gun and try to shoot somebody for saying something. So where do we draw that line? And that's the reason why I'm drawing the line. That's why I say 40-60. 40% of me understands, yes, a person can be influenced by that kind of rhetoric into doing something crazy. But 60% of me says you're still responsible for what you do, regardless of what somebody else said, because millions of people hear what Rachel Maddow says on MSNBC. They don't go out and try to shoot Charlie Kirk. So just because this guy went and did it, we can't blame Rachel Maddow. All right. So anybody who is, if any of you who leans heavily to the political left and you think that I never say anything positive or redeeming or mitigating about the left, there I just gave it to you. So make sure you clip that out and you use that. Now, investigators have to prove the connection to some extremist group or planning rather than just presuming ideology is motive. So you don't want to jump to conclusions to politicize the investigation. And I don't even understand why people always try to point to some group. It doesn't have to be a group. This story came out what's today? Today is Thursday. So I think it might have been like Monday this week. I saw several of the paid influencers on X, the paid Democratic influencers on X. And I know they're paid because they all come out with the same message on the same day. They just say it in different ways, but they're all saying the same thing. So it's easy to point them out. You follow a few of them, you notice they're all saying the same thing. Okay, he's paid, she's paid, because they're all coming out with the same stuff at the same time. And they all label it the same way. Oh, breaking news and stuff like that. So they all came out on around Monday, and they were saying it has been proven that the shooter, allegedly, the Charlie Kirk shooter, the alleged Charlie Kirk shooter, was not connected to any left-wing extremist groups at all. And it looks like this person just acted on their own. And the paid Democratic influencers were framing this as if that proves that the people on the right, let's say MAGA, was wrong by saying that this shooter, the alleged shooter, was motivated or sent or put up to the job by some extreme leftist group. And my response to that is, I don't give a damn if the person was connected to a group or not. They could have been doing it by themselves. Why you got to be part of a group? The person doesn't have to be part of a group. You're on the left. This person was clearly left-leaning, the alleged shooter, clearly left-leaning, a man dating a man who is becoming a woman. So that makes him, I guess we can say he's under the rainbow flag, whatever you want to call this guy, puts him under the rainbow flag. Now, that ain't the right. No, you're not on the right. You're not on the political right supporting Charlie Kirk if you're a man dating a man who's becoming a woman. All right, we can agree to that. So I don't care if he's part of a group or not. Individually, we can hold him accountable just for that. And if this is the thing that he agreed with and the thing that he believed in, then we got to put that on the left. Same way that if some shooter goes and shoots somebody, Rachel Maddow or something, and they got on a red MAGA hat, what is everybody going to say about that? What would everybody say if somebody with a red MAGA hat shoots some prominent person on the left? They're going to say MAGA did it. They're going to blame that on MAGA, right? Now, does the person need to be part of a group? Did they have to be part of some Discord online chatting about it? Did they have to have a friend who put them up to it? Just the fact they had the red MAGA hat on when they did it. Or if they shoot the bullet and the shell casing says MAGA, and then it takes out some person who's prominent on the left, everybody's going to make that into MAGA did this. MAGA is violent. Here is another violent, straight, heterosexual white man in America. This is the biggest threat that we have. This is, what do they call it? Domestic terrorism. That's what they're going to call it, right? If that was to happen to somebody on the left. So now that this guy he clearly looks like he's on the left, doesn't like Charlie Kirk, who is anti-LGBTQ, clearly, who was anti-LGBTQ. He's a Christian, devout Christian, and in the text, LGBTQ ain't in it. No, we all know that. And he's dating a man who's becoming a woman. Again, it's not even a real thing. Of course, you got to put that on the left. What group does it? I don't need a group connection. That's enough information. So for people to say that investigators have to prove a connection to an extremist group, again, what makes a group extremist? First of all, what if it's just a group? Why does a group need to be an extremist? What makes someone an extreme of something? An extremist group? It's just a group. And they said, or some type of planning, rather than presuming that the ideology is motive. Again, it doesn't have to be ideology. This person could have just been radicalized, if we want to use that word, by what they've been hearing in the media. Even if they weren't that. Even if they were radicalized by what they hear in the media. A lot of people are radicalized by what they hear in the media. They don't go grab a gun and go try to shoot anybody. You just have your ideas, your beliefs, and you go argue about them on the internet. If you go as far as to grab a weapon and try to shoot somebody, there's something wrong with you mentally. You've lost your mind in some way. You can listen to TV all day. You can listen to OAN, you can listen to Fox, you can listen to CNN, you can listen to MSNBC, you can scroll all around social media, doom scrolling. Doesn't mean you're going to go and grab a weapon and try to do something to somebody, regardless of what you hear. Most of us are not going to do that. 99% of us. So the small percentage of people who go out and do something crazy, something is wrong with them. Let's not put it on the group. But if we're going to play this game of we're going to take every person who does something crazy and we're going to try to connect them to one side or the other, then you got to balance it out. And when I say balance it out, it doesn't mean everyone, if it's one on this side, got to be one on that side. What I mean is we got to be fair. Because again, if a guy with a MAGA hat on shoots some person on the left, what is everybody going to say? The left is going to have a field day with that. They're going to run wild with that. MAGA, 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 violent, violent, violent. Everybody knows that's what would happen. So when this person who's dating a man who's becoming a woman shoots Charlie Kirk, How is it not fair to make a presumption about that one? It's a rhetorical question. Right? It requires no answer. Now, when a federal building is attacked, it underlines the danger of this us versus them framing. Public service enforcing the law becomes scapegoats in rhetorical wars. And this is something that people need to understand. Now, ICE agents are just people with jobs. ICE agents are not necessarily MAGA or not MAGA, Trump or not Trump. They are federal agents with jobs. You got to understand, if you work for ICE, you could have been working for ICE since somebody could be working for ICE for 20 years. So any of you know anyone who's worked in federal enforcement or law enforcement rather for 20 years plus? If you work for a federal law enforcement agency, understand that you could be working for a Democrat, then a Republican, then a Democrat, then a Republican, then a Democrat, then a Republican over the course of your career at the exact same job. The person in charge changes, but you still got the same job. So there is no guarantee that an ICE agent is even MAGA in the first place. ICE agent could be a very strong Democrat, but they're just doing their job. Their job is, if Tom Homan or Kristi Noem makes the call and says, okay, we're going to Reno, Nevada, and we're going to go to this neighborhood right here, and y'all going to find the illegal immigrants, and we're going to detain them. That's your job. You got to do your job. And when Barack Obama was president, they had to follow those orders. And when Biden was president, you had to follow his orders. And when George W. Bush was president, you had to follow his orders. So you're just doing whatever the job tells you to do. And people are acting like ICE is all of a sudden this MAGA thing. No, ICE is just an organization for the federal government. And again, we had Trump, we had Biden, we had Trump, we had Barack, we had George W. Bush. How all of a sudden is this some political thing? It's not at all. Not the workers themselves. So the workers being demonized here, and people like, well, ICE agents, Gavin Newsom out here sounding crazy, talking about ICE agents shouldn't be able to. Didn't he just pass a law about this? So he passed a law in the state of California that when you're doing federal law enforcement, you can't cover your face. Now, why does he care if your face is covered or not? Why he's doing that is to, first of all, scores political points for him in California and amongst the people on the left, that the people made this whole big stink about ICE agents covering their faces so they can't be identified. And why do people care if an ICE agent gets identified? Not because you're worried about the ICE agent doing the wrong thing, but because they want to threaten the ICE agents with doxing. Oh, we found out who this guy is. We find out where he lives. Find out who his kids are. Find out where his wife works. Find out if they have a business on the side so we can torpedo their business. This is all a way of threatening the ICE agents and stopping them from doing their jobs, because the political left has created this frame that anything that has to do with enforcing immigration laws is somehow negative because Donald Trump wants to do it, when immigration laws have been on the books in America for the last 100 years. Now, all of a sudden, enforcing the laws is a right-wing thing. Immigration laws are a right-wing thing now, all of a sudden, according to Gavin Newsom, according to AOC, according to Bernie Sanders, according to Jasmine Crockett, according to Kamala Harris. Now, all of a sudden, enforcing border laws has become a right-wing, has become a partisan idea. When Barack Obama, in fact, deported more people than Donald Trump did. And Gavin Newsom is trying to score political points. So Gavin Newsom is willing to cut off his nose to spite his face. So in order to win points against Donald Trump and call himself standing up to Donald Trump, this is one of the points that Gavin Newsom is going to lay out. If Gavin Newsom runs for president in 2028, remember that I told you what I'm about to tell you. He is going to point out that he stood up to Donald Trump. And one of the ways he's going to point out he stood up to Donald Trump is by forcing any law enforcement officer in the state of California to not be able to cover their face when doing official work. That's going to be one of his points of emphasis of how I stood up to Donald Trump, when all you're actually doing is putting federal agents in danger by putting them in position to possibly be doxxed by everyday citizens who are not violating the law because they're mad that the ICE agent is doing the job of finding people who are violating the law by being here without proper documentation and pulling them out as if they're doing something wrong. They're doing something nefarious by finding people who don't have proper documentation. All of a sudden, they're doing something bad. All of a sudden. And Gavin Newsom is going to hold this up as a talking point, as something positive that he did, when it actually makes no sense whatsoever. And his opponent, let's say it's J.D. Vance, will be quick to jump on this and use it against him. So, Gavin, what you're saying is you're taking the concept of someone doing the job of a federal agency, which is under the control of the president, which you're aiming to be. Gavin, you want to be president. You just made it harder for them to do their jobs without being threatened and attacked and having their families attacked by everyday citizens just because you want to call yourself standing up to Donald Trump. So you want to score political points. So in order to score political points, you put a bunch of federal workers in danger and their families in danger just so you can say you stood up to Donald Trump. Sounds like politics as usual to me. JD Vance, you can take that one and use it for free. I'm not going to charge you for that one. If it happens to be JD or whoever it happens to be in 2028, if they run against Gavin Newsom, because that's what they should use back when he says this, because he's going to say it. He's going to use that. I think that's crazy. And then you want to be president. So let's say Gavin Newsom becomes president. Now you're going to tell everybody they got to walk around with their faces uncovered. Well, actually, what's going to happen is if Gavin Newsom became president, you wouldn't have to worry about ICE because they won't be doing any work. They're going to be sitting in the office playing on their phones because they're not going to be out finding anybody. Was ICE out finding anybody under Joe Biden? Were they hunting people down? They weren't doing anything. They were sitting around chilling. That's the reason why there was no border czar during the Biden administration. Border czar. We don't need a border czar. What we need a border czar for? All right, come on in. Welcome. Where you want to go? Wyoming? Okay, where you want to go? Ohio? You want to go to New York? You want to go to Maryland? You want to go to Philly? You want to go to Miami? Where you want to go? Louisiana? You want to stay here in Texas? Okay, you want to go to Phoenix? You want to go to California? Where you want to go? Montana? You want to go to North Dakota? You want to go to Michigan? All right, we got you. No problem. You don't need a border czar. If Gavin Newsom becomes president, y'all won't have to worry about ICE. It ain't going to be ICE. It's going to be water. Everybody catch that metaphor? All right. ICE is going to turn into water. It's going to turn into vapor. All right. If Gavin Newsom becomes president, you won't have to worry about ICE at all. Ain't going to be no ICE. All right. They're turning the freezer off. They're going to turn it on defrost. Now, everybody understand what I'm saying here? All right. That's what's going to happen if Gavin Newsom becomes president. But he is going to try to use that as a talking point. Now, conversely, claims that ICE is being demonized shouldn't be used to excuse poor policy, abuse, or lack of accountability within immigration reinforcement. Again, what have they done wrong? I haven't seen anybody actually point out something that ICE has actually done wrong in the process of executing their jobs. I haven't heard anybody say that. I haven't heard anybody say that they've done anything actually wrong in their enforcement. They're saying, okay, you're rounding people up. Every once in a while, somebody says they rounded up somebody who shouldn't have been rounded up. Okay, that person ends up getting out. Hey, sometimes the police make a mistake. That can happen. I don't think it's happening that often, but let's just say it does happen. Okay, you get rounded up. You go to court. You call your lawyer. You get out. You go back home. Okay, part of the game. Sometimes you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Unfortunately, it's just how it works. But they're saying that there may be poor policy, abuse, or lack of accountability. I say, give me examples. Tell me exactly what happened. And cite the exact situation. Now, strong rhetoric demanding that ICE show their faces, stop doing raids, or erase borders can embolden extremists to take action, believing that they operate under moral sanction. And this is the argument that people are making, that you're emboldening people to go take matters into their own hands because there's moral sanction. If you really believe Donald Trump's going to destroy your life and put you back in chains, you might want to get rid of Donald Trump before he puts you back in chains, because now he's talking about taking away your freedom. And if you keep saying that over and over and over again, Joe Biden, Gavin Newsom, Hillary Clinton, if you keep saying that over and over again, eventually people are going to think, okay, this guy is actually an existential threat to me personally, Kamala Harris. You keep saying that, people are going to start thinking it is real, and they're going to get really, really on a visceral level angry. This is not politics level angry. People are visceral, life or death angry at the idea of Donald Trump, MAGA, and the political right now. It's not a political argument. It's this guy's threatening our lives argument. And the left has done a great job of creating this frame. And while many of us, understand that this is political theater, is part of the game, a lot of people don't understand that. And they're taking this as a real, like a serious thing that needs to be addressed. Now, when you overshadow that with passive policy and talk of just embracing people, then you get a problem. You get 10 to anywhere from 12 to 20 million people coming into the country across our borders during the Biden administration, which is a lot of people. That's a lot of people. You know how many people that is every day? And the national debate over immigration must continue so long as it doesn't cross into dehumanization or calls for violence. And actually, I don't think there needs to be that much of a debate, honestly. I don't think there needs to be that much of a debate. I'm an absolutist on some things. One of them is if you have rules in place, you got to enforce them or they're not rules. If you have rules that you don't enforce, they're not rules. Stop calling them rules. Call them suggestions. Under the Trump administration, Trump won. The border was enforced as a rule. Under the Biden administration, The border went from being a rule to being a suggestion. And under the second Trump administration, the border went back to being a rule again. Simple as that. If you have a rule, you must enforce it. If you don't enforce a rule, it's not a rule. And people will treat it as what it is, which is a suggestion, meaning they can listen if they want to. They don't listen if they don't want to. So many people came across the border during the Biden administration because it wasn't being enforced. Of course, you're going to come across the border. You're not enforcing the rules. What do you think is going to happen? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris knew what was going to happen. That's what they wanted to happen. This is the reason why you heard Kamala talking about a path to citizenship. This is one of her talking points during her campaign, path to citizenship, which meant what? We want to get all these people who come into the country without proper documentation and have been granted legal status. That was the thing they kept using, legal status. We're going to keep these people in legal status so they can stay in the country technically on paper. And then we're going to get them a path to citizenship. A fast track to citizenship was actually the term she used. Fast track to citizenship. They become citizens. Now they can do what? Everybody put in the comments. The people who they let into the country, if they become citizens, now they can do what? And this is what Kamala was trying to do. And this is a long-term game for the Democrats. Exactly. All y'all know. Long-term game, and Kamala was just the one told to do it. Get these people legal status immediately. Fast track them to citizenship. Had Kamala been president right now, she'd be working on getting that fast track to citizenship done right now. Let's say the Democrats had swept the election. They didn't sweep. They got swept. They got swept. President, Senate, House. But let's say the Democrats have won all three. President, Senate, House. Right now, Kamala Harris will be trying to get a bill through Congress. She'd be pressuring Congress to get a bill through that is all about the fast track to citizenship. That bill would get to her desk. She would sign it immediately. And now she'd be celebrating that now there's a way to get a fast track to citizenship for all those 20 million people who came into the country, none of which would have been deported because Tom Homan wouldn't have a job right now because he wouldn't be the border czar. There would be no border czar. What do you need a border czar for? Again. And all those people would have become citizens. Now they're eligible to vote. And all those swing states would now be blue states. And some red states would become swing states. That is the long-term plan of the Democratic Party. Had Kamala Harris won, they would have put this on fast forward. They would have stepped on the gas had she won. So when Donald Trump ran in 2024, he understood what was at stake. And a lot of people really didn't understand the gravity of that and what exactly that meant. Because if the Democrats are able to turn some swing states into blue states and some red states into swing states, well, how is a Republican ever going to win the whole White House again? How's it going to happen? And that's what you really got to think about. That's what they were looking to do. That was the long-term play that they were playing. It didn't work. And now Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, they are urgent about getting as many of these undocumented people out of the country as quickly as possible because they only got 4 years. All right. Who knows who's going to win in 2028? And if it's a Democrat, all they're going to do is go right back to doing the same thing they just did. What do you think Gavin Newsom would do if he wins in 2028? What do you think is going to happen to the border? You already know what's going to happen. And he was the governor of California. What do you think is going to happen? That border is going to be wide open. Again, Biden let in 20 million. Gavin's going to go for 40 if he wins in 2028. And this is the reason why Trump and company are so trying to get this border locked down. And they need to get laws passed for this stuff. But who knows what they can do, what they can't do. Now, this murder of a detainee in this attack is tragic. It reminds us that in law enforcement and immigration, humans are involved and rhetoric should never reduce people to targets or symbols. And again, this person went and shot inside the building. This person clearly doesn't have control of their brain faculties. Because why would you even do that? And then you hit the wrong person. They're probably trying to hit an ICE agent. Didn't do it. They hit a detainee. So the very person they're trying to help, they shot. So this person's crazy. Then they shot themselves. So this person obviously had some mental issues. So can we make this about a political side? No. But at the same time, if it was on the other side, would they make it about it? Yes. So if you're on the political right, I say have at it. Why? Because had somebody on the right done something like this, what would they do? Let's say there was some LGBTQ gathering happening somewhere. And a person with a MAGA hat goes and shoots at it. And some LGBTQ person gets shot. And then the person with the MAGA hat shoots themselves. What would people on the left be saying today if that happened yesterday? We all know exactly what they'd be saying. So if they're going to play that game, at some point you got to play the game back. Now, I heard Megyn Kelly talking about this in 2024. And I believe, let me say what she said, and just paraphrasing what she said. She said, on the political left, If they can take anything and everything that they can grab from the right and try to frame it as negative and pin it on MAGA, they will do it, and they will use it, and they will get as much mileage as they can out of it to make Donald Trump, MAGA, and the political right look bad, even if it makes no sense, and they got to kind of stretch things and extrapolate things. They will do it to make MAGA look bad. And she said, if they're going to play the game that way, at some point, you got to meet them on the low road, and you got to fight fire with fire. You can't keep taking the high road when they keep doing this. And she was talking during the time of the Trump lawfare, all those law cases, the legal cases Trump had in 2024. She said, if they're going to play the game that way, at some point, if you're on the right, you got to fight back. And you can't just sit there and keep taking the high road, because they're going to keep doing this. And they don't care. They're just going to keep doing it anyway to make Trump, MAGA, and conservatives look bad. And I 100% agree. She was right. Even though I understand more, I'd rather play the logical game. I'd rather let's play the high road game. My argument against your argument was going to the open marketplace of ideas, and let's just have a logical discussion, a rational discussion, and let's see whose opinion or whose idea or whose argument is better than the other person's argument. I'd rather play that game. But if you're playing against an opponent who doesn't want to play that way and they want to play dirty, at some point you got to get dirty. At some point you can't keep turning the other cheek. You got to know how to play dirty just to show your opponent that, okay, if you want to do this, I can do it. You want to play like this, we can play like this. Not going to go well for you, but we can do it if this is what you insist on doing. I agree with what she said there. And I believe that some people on the political right are starting to understand this and starting to be willing to play the game while at the same time maintaining some control. Notice, I think I mentioned this yesterday or the day before. Charlie Kirk gets shot 2 weeks ago. Where were the Charlie Kirk riots? What city did they happen in? This is a question I'm asking. What city were the Charlie Kirk riots? What city were the Charlie Kirk protests? What city did they happen in? Where did buildings get destroyed? Where did damage get done? Where did anything get burned down? Where did anybody get arrested for unruly behavior in a mass gathering? Where did this happen? What city did the Charlie Kirk riot take place in? What town was it? What they did, the people on the right, they got organized, they strategized, and they galvanized their audience. They met, 100,000 or so people or more, not to mention who was watching online at that memorial service they had on Sunday in Arizona. That's what they did. Now, compare that to what happened for George Floyd in 2020. I'll just leave that there for y'all to think about. Now, some will argue that the real problem is a structural policy, some type of corruption, detention practices, not just words, and proper reform may slow tension, not just rhetorical control. I don't think there's that much reform is necessary. If you go to another country, any of you who's been to other countries know anything about this. You go to another country and you don't have proper documentation and you get caught. Do you know what they do to you? America, they're nice. Do you know what they do to you? You go to another country, you get caught without proper documentation. You go to Mexico without proper documentation and get caught. Do you know what happens? Do you know what happens in some of these other countries when you don't follow the rules properly and you're a foreigner? You're not even a citizen. Are you kidding me? Even if you're an American, until America finds out and maybe starts making some phone calls. But do you know what happened in these places? They don't play. So here, you get caught without proper documentation. America's nice. You at least get to go to court. You get a lawyer. You know what happens in another country? You don't get no lawyer. They don't have due process in a lot of these other places. There's no lawyer. You don't get a day in court. You don't have rights. What are you talking about rights? You think you're in America? You don't have no rights over here. You get what we give you. And that's how it goes. Oh, what you want? Food, water. What? You don't have any rights over here. We are nice. America's nice with what we do to detainees who are here without proper documentation. And a lot of you who've never been anywhere, you need to learn a little bit more about what happens in other parts of the world. I'm not saying America needs to be like them. What I'm saying is people talking about there needs to be reform as if what America's doing is wrong. What America's doing is this is like the Ritz-Carlton of what happens to detainees without proper documentation compared to other countries in the world. Go to another country and not have proper documentation. Go to Russia without proper documentation. Get caught in China without proper paperwork. Get caught in Mexico without proper paperwork. And you tell me what happens if you survive to tell the story. Anyway, this event should force leaders on both sides to carefully police their language when discussing ICE and immigration enforcement, lest their words contribute to escalation. And again, this is a tricky thing. I get what it is, but it is a very tricky thing to say words contribute to escalation because there are a few crazy people out there who are going to be crazy no matter what. Now, silence or lack of proportional outrage can also speak volumes if only One side is held back from strong statements, momentum shifts in dangerous ways. That I 100% agree with. All that said, folks, let's get into the comments. Let me see if I can. I'm trying to think if I can go without a bathroom break today. I think I'm going to try. I'm trying to go without a bathroom break here. And let's just get straight into the comments. Let's see. Over on Instagram, we had a few comments. Let's see what we got. Who was that? Niels Ajib 7. Good morning. Debo Brent, thanks for the follow over there. Timothy Alexander says, just as long as this administration stop ignoring meeting with the Democrats. What does that mean? What do you mean? King Vo said, that's the job they signed up for. It's not a safe job. Deal with it and stop crying. I don't know about all that, King Vo. What makes the job not safe? All you're doing is finding people who don't have proper documentation and pulling them out of the country. What makes that unsafe? Not like you're hunting down. It's not like you're not narcos. Right? That's not exactly what the gig is. And ICE agents aren't saying anything. Also, Kingo, I haven't heard a single ICE agent say anything. What's happening is the federal administration, the feds, are saying, hey, our ICE agents can't do their jobs because people have demonized them to make it seem like they're doing something wrong when they're actually just enforcing the laws. Because, again, ICE agents worked under Biden. They worked under Obama. They worked under the first Trump. It didn't become somewhat dangerous until this administration. So, no, that's not the job they signed up for. I get what you're trying to say here, but this is not true.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy. Okay.
King Vo said, both sides would make it political, Dre. Don't be obtuse. LOL. No, you're completely out of your depth here saying both sides will make it political. Have you been paying attention to politics for the last 10 years?
Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried.
And comment is, you said you're objective and not a Republican or a Democrat. That's correct. I am objective. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. That doesn't mean that I can't say one side is doing one thing and another side is not doing it. That's what objectivity is. Objectivity doesn't mean you give out criticism equally. That's not objectivity. That's preschool. In real life, you tell things exactly as they are.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
King Vo said, Trump said they're literally hunting criminals, hence not a safe job. Well, if you are here without proper documentation, that's called illegal immigration. So technically that makes you a criminal. That's what he says when he says hunting criminals. On top of the fact that as president, you say things rhetorically, and Trump does a pretty good job of this. He speaks in metaphors to help people understand why something is happening a certain way. Because if you say it too plainly, then it doesn't get enough people excited. You can't get your voters or your base engaged, and therefore they won't vote for it. They won't support it. That's part of the political mechanism. That's the way you have to do things. That's the machination of doing things politically. You said, I don't understand why I have to explain this. Oh, well, you're not explaining it. You're speaking it at a college kid level. I don't know how old you are, but you're speaking this at a college student level. But logically, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. And I've already knocked down the things that you're saying. So you got to understand how these things happen. This is the reason why I'm on the microphone and respectfully, you're in the comments.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Now, over on TikTok, let's see what we got. A few of these. Zenobi, no, that was not it. January 6th, Lahek says, is an old, tired, red herring argument. Well, people are going to keep throwing it out because it was a spectacle of an event. January 6th was a spectacle of an event, whether you think it was positive, negative, or neutral. Everybody's always going to bring up January 6th, especially people who are trying to make Trump look bad. And anybody who doesn't want to hear about January 6th, go ahead. You got 3 more years to hear about it, at least. So you got at least 3 more years of hearing about January 6th. Jaslyn Carter said, allegedly Gavin Newsom and you mirror each other, in my opinion. How so? What do you mean by that? Kuya bin Yasharo said, I'm glad that woman didn't win. You talking about Kamala? Yeah, Kamala would have been a disaster because I don't think, again, she had to go through the gauntlet. If she went through the gauntlet and became the nominee, then I would say, okay, she's at least ready to win. But she didn't go through the gauntlet. So I give no credence to her campaign, her 107 days. Lonnie Hill, thanks for the follow. Millie said, I met an undocumented lady who said that she was told in her country, Venezuela, to vote Democrat. Told in her country, like in Venezuela or in the United States. Annie F said, easy way to get in taxpayers' pockets. What are you talking about? Jay Rocker said, what's the problem with pathway to citizenship? The problem is she was preaching pathway to citizenship, Jay Rocker, after they let 12 to 20 million people in without going through the proper procedures to begin with. That many people could not have come into the country if the proper procedures were being enforced in the first place. So what they did was lower the standards to even come in. Then they said, we're going to make citizens out of all these people who got in without following the proper documentation in the first place. So they're basically trying to rig the game. That's what's wrong with it.
Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried.
Dana Pecan said, "Why we be in a pickle if her behind got in? Yeah, it'd be more than a pickle. It'd be a whole salad." Kuya Ben said, "Nothing for black folks." No, Kamala wasn't concerned with that. I mean, I did a whole album on whether Kamala was even black or not. Furu the Guru said they were trying to get a new voter base because black people woke up. Well, it looked like black people were starting to wake up, and at the same time, they're trying to solidify. I mean, Furu the Guru, we got to be clear that, first of all, still 90-some% of black women voted for Kamala. Now, with black men, she lost a significant percentage, but not most of them. Still what, 70, 80% of black men still voted for Kamala Harris. Now, she lost a chunk of black men, but not all of them. And the Democratic Party is like, well, where's everything going? And they're like, where's everything going? We're getting all these immigrants. We're getting all these brown people, not black, but brown people coming into the country. We might as well get them on our side. How do we get them on our side? We'll show them that we're the party of supporting immigrants. So when you come into the country, no matter how you came in, we're going to get you a pathway to citizenship. So now you're legal. We're going to make sure you know that we did that for you. So when it's time for you to vote, of course you're going to vote for us. It's great strategy by the Democrats. I'm not knocking their strategy. I don't like what they were trying to do, but the actual strategy of the execution was actually a good idea. Now, why they tried to do it, I do not agree with. Shorty says so they can work, help the country, deport gangs and criminals, not those working. Well, Shorty, you can't pick and choose. If you have a rule in place, you can't pick and choose when to enforce a rule. A rule is a rule. If the rule says nobody be late, it doesn't matter who's late. If you're late, you get the penalty. So it's not, let's just deport the gang members and deport the criminals, because if you find a gang member or a criminal and you try to say they're a gang member or a criminal, this is why we're going to kick them out. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to get their lawyer to say, well, I'm not a gang member. I'm not a criminal. All right, I'm working. What if you got a job and you're a gang member? Do you get deported or not, Shorty? What do you do? What if you're a criminal and you got a job? What do? Do you deport them or they get to say? See, this is where these frames, these binary frames, they sound good when you say them, but then when you got to actually figure out, does this make sense? They don't add up so easily. User 48, thanks for the follow. Tom Tiger said, you're 100% correct. Thank you. Valor said, are you a Trump man? What does that even mean? If you mean, am I on the Trump side, MAGA, etc.? The answer is no. I'm not on any side. I have no side. I did a 3-hour live stream about a year ago that said who to vote for. Let me pull that video up because I want everybody to know that I did this video. I don't want people to think I'm just talking here. Nothing that I say in any of these lives, especially when I'm responding to you all's comments, is a brand new idea. I've said all these things so many times. That's the reason why I'm able to respond to things that people say, especially some of you all's, not all of you, but some of you all's nonsense frames so easily. Because I've been doing this for a while. So who to vote for 2024. This video is right here on YouTube. Y'all can see it right here. Just look up Dre Baldwin, who to vote for. You see it right there? Who to vote for. Vote 2020-24. It's right there. And in that video, I explained who to vote for. And who to vote for was not Trump or Kamala. But on top of that, I did 2 videos. Let me show you these 2. Just so y'all know, I got receipts on all this. Everything I'm talking about, I got receipts for. I explained to you all why Kamala was going to win the 2024 election. Yes. Why Kamala was going to win the 2024 election. I did a whole video on it. And where is it? Why Kamala Harris will win the 2024 election. Here it is. 48 minutes on my podcast. I did 2 hours on live stream right there. Why Kamala will win 2024. And this argument was, if she won, why would she win? That was the frame that I did that under. I did it under that frame. Then the very next day, I did another video, and guess what I said? Why Trump will win the 2024 election. And here it is, the very next day. Why Trump will win. There you see it, right there. So I got receipts on all this, folks. I can argue both sides of any subject that I understand that I care about. So answer your question, Bauer2374. Thanks for asking. Carla said, we can never allow the Democrats to be in power ever again. Well, Carla, that's going to happen. The Democrats will get back in power at some point. Jay Rocket said, so a pathway to citizenship is a good thing. Well, it depends on what type of pathway we're talking. And technically, the phrase that Kamala was using was fast track to citizenship. It wasn't just pathway. Because Jay Rocket, just to be clear, there's already a pathway to citizenship. How many people in here listening, put me in the comments if you or somebody in your family has come here as an immigrant but became a citizen. Put me in the comments if you or anyone close to you has actually become a citizen. And Jay Rocket, everybody you see in the comments saying me right now, all right, that's your proof that a pathway to citizenship already exists. It was Kamala's talking about the fast track to citizenship for people who had just come in. That was the problem, not the concept of the pathway itself, because the pathway already exists. So even over on Instagram, a few people, Sasha Sims, King Co, saying they have gotten it themselves. So it's not the pathway itself that's the problem. Nee says she got the vote in our economy and nation would tank. Well, maybe. Luckily, we don't have to worry about it. Nana Cat said it'll be a long time before a Democrat is in charge. They did that to themselves. Nana Cat, I wouldn't speak so soon. I would not speak so soon that there'll be a long time. How long is a long time? Possibly 3 years. Don't speak too soon. Now, those of you who are on the right, don't get cocky. Now, I've been saying this ever since November. Don't get cocky if you're on the right. Things can swing very quickly. Gary Gray said, try to fast track them to citizenship and ship them to red states and turn them blue, or at least turn them pink. And turn the swing states blue. They knew what they were doing. Democrats ain't dumb. You might not like their ideas, but don't think they're stupid. Shorty said, many of us Black Americans have Hispanic, Cuban, and Mexican family members like me. Okay, what does that have to do with anything? Valor said, I feel like you a Trump man. Well, how you feel has nothing to do with the reality of the situation.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Nana Cat said, Democrat behavior got more people to vote Republican. That I would agree with. Man at 5280 said, I'm done turning the other cheek. I'm in the flipping tables and whipping people stage. Right, fair enough. I understand you. I understand. J-Man said, sir, I agree with you 100%. You have to fight fire with fire. Sooner or later, they're going to try to. I agree. Kay Clark said, tell me again how immigrants hurt the everyday person. I'm not seeing it still. Well, what you're asking here is your question is a non sequitur.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy.
Immigrants don't have to be, quote unquote, hurting the everyday person. If the law says you here without proper documentation means you get kicked out, you don't have to be hurting me. You are violating the law. Therefore, you have to go. If I go to Brazil and I'm there without proper documentation, or I got my visa to expire and they find out, I don't have to be hurting anybody. I could be having a great time, having sex with Brazilian women every day and spending money in Brazil. But if they decide, hey, you are violating our law by being here without proper documentation, they can kick me out. It doesn't matter what I was doing. It's the fact that I'm there without proper documentation. The law is above all those other considerations. So that's the only thing you have to consider. Are you following the law? Yes or no? You're not? Okay, you got to go. And that's it. Echoes 9711 said, common sense doesn't equal Trump. Well, what do you mean by that?
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Valor said, so you think Democrats make sense? Uh-oh.
Strawberry cheesecake.
And somebody actually used a straw man earlier. I didn't even give him the award. But Valor, I'll give you the straw man of the day award. Said, so you think Democrats make sense? Well, first of all, you should never ask the question, say, so you think. Just go off of what I actually said that you actually know to be true, not what I think, because you can't read the mind of another human being. And do I think Democrats make sense? Well, who's the Democrat you're referring to, and which point are you talking about? Because there are thousands of Democrats, literally millions of Democrats, but we're talking politicians, probably hundreds of them. And which point are we talking about to ask me if they're making sense or not? Shorty said, grew up in NYC, no problem ever with immigrants except crowded buses during work times. They're working. Shorty, what the hell does that have to do with anything? Who cares? That's a loaded, what's the word? It's a loaded statement that you're putting out there. You are defending that you've been around immigrants and nothing bad ever happened to you, as if that means that an immigrant being here without proper documentation means that that's okay. The immigrants you grew up around might have proper documentation. They're allowed to do what they want. If you don't have proper documentation, I don't care how good of a person you are. I don't care how much you work. You are here against the law and you got to go. That's the rule. So, Shorty, if you got a problem with the law, then you need to go talk to the people at the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. It's not me that made this up. I'm just a mouthpiece for explaining to you this is how the rules work. Yes, we're at 100K. Thank you, everybody. Gina said, 100% agree with you. We do not have to always take the high road. We need to stand our ground. Everybody needs to stand their ground. So a bunch of you saying, yeah, not one riot, nothing happened. They prayed, exactly. Karen Beauty Guru, Dana Pecom, Chris 2.0, Vivian from Philly, Nana Cat, Susan Yaya, Chris 2.0, I see you. Karina said Vance is even coming with the clapbacks. Yeah, JD Vance is pretty good with the clapbacks. So he's different from Trump in that way, is that he will go back and forth with you verbally. He's pretty good at it. So him versus Gavin Newsom will be very entertaining, if nothing else. Wife stay at home for TTSA says everyone was having revivals instead of burning down the towns. Yes, that happened. No protests. Saving Bees, thanks for the follow. Chris said exactly shows the difference. It does show a very stark difference. Carlos said none didn't happen. Nana Cat said conservatives didn't destroy. Chrissy Joe said we have prayer meetings instead. Yeah, this is all true. Dana Pecan family said millions online powerful. All true. Unshakable faith. Thanks for the follow. Murphy the Mutt said Republicans in office are weak. Why do you say that? J-Man said problem is we don't have enough leaders like you speaking up. Well, I don't know who we is because I'm not on the side, but I'm not made for politics. Politics is not the space for me. Yeah, so all of you understand what happens in other countries. You go over there without proper documentation. It's not a game. Chris said, why are we expected to just take illegals? Because we are allegedly the land of free, the home of the brave. We're a country of immigrants, quote unquote. We're actually a country of citizens because everybody wants to become a citizen, not just be an immigrant. Karina said they can disappear you without a trace. Yeah, they can. If nobody cares about you back home, then nobody's ever going to find you because nobody's looking for you. Shorty said, do you want to know the difference? Black Americans are tired of police brutality in our community. Shorty, what are you referring to? You talking about the George Floyd response versus the Charlie Kirk response? And I get the frame here, Shorty. And if you were talking to a room full of a certain class of black people, what you just said would get a round of applause. But that's not going to fly over here. Definitely not talking to me. Police brutality in our community. George Floyd, first of all, let's be clear. George Floyd did something stupid. I'm not saying that the cop was right. I mean, the cops, all 4 cops got held accountable for what happened. There's a whole discussion to be had about that. We've had it many times here. So this might be your first time here, Shorty. So I'll give you a synopsis. First of all, I am an absolutist when it comes to taking personal accountability for your actions. So let's just talk about Mr. Floyd, because you're talking about police brutality. The cops said, you're under arrest. They put George Floyd in handcuffs. While he was still standing up, he said, I can't breathe. So it looked to me like I can't breathe was his go-to thing. And it happened before. He had been arrested, and it was noted in the police report that he said, I can't breathe, even though nobody was even holding him down. He wasn't even on the ground. I can't breathe was just something. It was one of his go-to phrases he would use with a cop to try to get sympathy and try to get out of the situation. Basically try to talk himself out of the handcuffs, which never happens. George Floyd started physically fighting with the cops while in handcuffs, while on some type of drug. You saw him pop the pill in his mouth when he first got accosted by the police officer sitting in his car. He was already a drug addict. He already had drugs in his system. He already had beat up his body for 40 plus years doing what he was doing. Then he tried to get into physical. He tried to physically resist the cops while his hands were cuffed behind his back. That is stupid. Had he lived, I would have said to George Floyd, you stupid mofo, what are you doing? You got 4 cops around you. You're already on drugs. You got your hands cuffed behind your back. What exactly do you think you were going to achieve? That's what I would say to George Floyd. So to say that the George Floyd marching was all about police brutality, I say that sounds good when you're talking to the right audience, but shorty, this is the wrong audience to try to push that bullshit. George Floyd was not 100%. This wasn't just a cop just coming around just beating George Floyd up for no reason. This wasn't Rodney King. No, this was, you're already handcuffed. Why are you fighting when we're trying to put you in the car? And you're already on drugs. Now, some say the cop was kneeling on his neck. Some say his back, his shoulder. Let's say the cop was kneeling on his neck. How'd you end up on the ground in the first place? Because you wouldn't get in the car. They tried to put you in the car. You fought getting in the car. You asked to be put on the ground. They put you on the ground. They got you laying on the ground. The ambulance is late because the ambulance went to the wrong place. A lot of people don't know that. Ambulance goes to the wrong place. George Floyd ends up passing away because the ambulance was late coming to pick him up. And they put all of this, and the white cop is the one who took the brunt of the blame for all of this situation. And there's a lot more that could be said about the George Floyd situation I'm not going to get into here today. But to say that black people are tired of police brutality, I say nonsense. 99.9% of the people out there marching and burning down the community, our communities, over the George Floyd situation, shorty, have never had a cop put a hand on them, let alone police brutality. So again, sounds good when you're talking to a bunch of white guilt white people who you can bully with that nonsense frame, but you can't talk to me with that.
Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried.
Carl in Indiana says the left has done a good job of convincing people that America is a terrible country. I don't think people actually believe that. That's the reason why they're still here. If America is really terrible, of course, people will be trying to leave. Nobody's going anywhere. Ron L., thanks for the follow. Sean and McD, good morning. Dana Pecan said, black girl screaming in Dubai airport. They arrested her, simple as laws being enforced. Yeah, Dubai enforces laws in a very strict way. They don't play over there. Now, Shorty said, be for real about George Floyd, no comparison. You're right, there is no comparison, but I think we're talking about it for two different reasons. You're right, there is no comparison. Kay Clark said, tell me again how immigrants hurt. Already responded to that. Dana said, try to go across the border to Canada without docs. Yeah, they're not letting that ain't happening. That's why nobody comes across from Canada. They come across from Mexico. Donna Smith, Nicole Collins, DDN, thanks for the follow. Chris says our border is important. Every border is important. If you don't have a border, you don't have a country. If there's no border, we might as well just be one big land. There's no need for a border. Just walk. You just land. There's no border. Can't call it a border if you're not enforcing it. Angela, thanks for the follow. Duke's mom said, I think he means that dealing with criminals who are often violent is not a safe job. But these aren't those type of criminals. They're criminals who don't have proper documentation. It's not like they are being come after because necessarily they did a crime in America. The crime is you don't have proper documentation. Now, some of them may have actually done stuff. And at the same time, the police go after criminals and they don't have their faces covered. So what's the difference? Heck said illegals use our resources in schools, healthcare for one. Yes, they do. And they use a lot of them. The more of them it is, the more resources they use. Duke's mom said we need to pay our cops and ICE agents a lot more money. They're dealing with the lowest common denominator in society. Well, Duke's mom, I get your frame, but who's paying for it? Do you know where that money comes from, Duke's mom? It comes from you. It comes out of your tax dollars. So when you say we need to pay them more, okay, you go first if you want to pay them more. Chris 2.0 said you can't go to Mexico without proper docs. No, you're right, you can't. Mr. Brading said Democrats don't care. Oh, they care. They just figure out a way to frame it the right way. They do care. I wouldn't say that they don't care. Let's see. I'm catching up on the comments, folks. I'm reading from the oldest to the newest. So any of you think I'm not reading your comments, I'm reading from the oldest to the newest. So a bunch of people said me. So anybody asking about the pathway to citizenship, there is a very strong pathway to citizenship in America and a very clear one on at that. All right, let's see. Elizabeth Cottrell, thanks for the follow. Chris said, bringing in the illegals, then give them citizenship, then they vote Democrat. No, well, that's the plan. They couldn't execute it yet, but they're trying. Bean said, what makes people think their legal entries give them rights? Or what makes people think that? The Democrats make them think that, Bean. That's a good question. Thank you for making that one easy for me. The Democrats make them think that. My Neutral Life says, Neutral Life. If Dems want to reform immigration policies, they would. They didn't want to. They wanted votes. I agree. That one you're right about. Jay Rocker said, that's literally what Trump does, pick and choose. Hegseth still has his job. Well, Jay Rocker, Donald Trump's the president. That's what he's supposed to do, pick and choose. We voted for him so he could pick and choose. That's literally why he got hired. Whisper Biscuit Baker Hill mom said they're illegal, they're criminals. Yes, the crime is they are here without proper documentation. That's correct. Loretta F.S. Teagle said, oh, thanks for the follow. My Neutral Life, thanks for the follow. Shorty said they get deported if they are a criminal regardless. Well, if you don't have proper documentation, you should be deported. Anyone without proper documentation has to go. That's the law. Karina said a lot of the migrant criminals had job and family at home. Yeah, so if you don't have proper documentation, you got to go. I don't care if you got a job. I don't care if you got a family at home. If your family wants to go with you, they can go with you, but you have to go. Tom Homan made that very clear in January. Lisa Lisbury Tyler, thanks for the follow. B. Ashley, thanks you for the share. Wifey said, why does anybody have to explain or justify what party or who they vote for? Because people try to use it as a pejorative to discredit your points. Wifey says, that's why people try to ask me what side I'm on when I make these points, because I'm clear I'm not giving myself a way to be on one side or the other. So people try to figure out what side I'm on so they can decide whether or not they want to agree or disagree with me, which is a false frame in the first place. But I mean, it's human nature. Chris Grissett said, "Why do we have to pick sides? Use common sense on the big issues." Well, Chris, I just answered that question. That's why. Furu said, "The left loves to throw rocks and hide their hands and act like you started it." Well, they try. Josephine said, "If she won, it was only because of her gender and skin color. Thank God she didn't." Yeah, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, because even Barack Obama, he is black. He won, though, because Barack Obama was actually a very good politician. Kamala Harris is not a good politician. So she had too many things going against her. My Neutral Life says, "Where do people want to belong to a party?" Well, Neutral Life, you got to understand human nature. People want to feel like they belong to something. So if the Democrats offer something for people to belong to, people will jump in on it. It's a common practice used in building organizations, teams, cultures, selling products, services. Get people to feel like they're a part of something, they'll jump in on it. Chris 2.0, for example, is illegals that cannot speak or read English getting CDL like the accident. Yeah, we talked about that about a month ago. Being said, legal pathway, legal entry. Yeah, you followed a legal process, I have no problem. I know plenty of immigrants who came in, proper documentation, they went through the process, and they're good. Nothing wrong with that. My Neutral Life said, even if you vote for a candidate, it doesn't make you that party. That's a good point. So a whole bunch of you know of people or are a person who went through that stuff to become citizens in America. So the pathway exists. Yes, Dana said, fast track means getting them ready to vote. Yes, that's the whole point, is getting them ready to vote, because they want to get votes. They want to dominate the electoral process. Chris said, friends from Philippines. My Neutral Life said, my close friend, they all got citizenship. Joey said, have you ever thought about connecting with Turning Point if you haven't already? I've heard of Turning Point. I was looking at one of their events that they have, because I live in South Florida, so they had their events often in Tampa. I was going to go to one of their events maybe a year or two ago, but I didn't get around to going. Maybe one day I'll go to one of their events just to see what it's about. The problem is I'm not a conservative, so I don't know how much they'd be interested in me. Our Philly Inc. said, what do you think would happen to the economy if ICE caught every immigrant? If ICE caught every illegal immigrant, you mean illegal immigrant? What do I think would happen to the economy? Nothing, because it would be a gradual process and the economy would gradually adjust as certain people got pulled out of it if they were already involved. I mean, something would happen, but it would be such a gradual change that it wouldn't be like some big thing that everybody would feel at once. Jay Rocker said, because it can take years and people need it sooner. Need it? Well, Jay Rocker, let's say you go to Brazil and you need citizenship within 6 months and they say, well, it's going to take 5 years. What are you going to do? You're going to go tell them, well, I need it in 6 months. How do you think that conversation is going to go? Shorty said, executive orders can change the rules and allow non-documented immigrants without crimes to legally stay. Yes, exactly. All right, finally, you said something I agree with. And Donald Trump can change by writing his own executive order. This is the problem with executive orders, is that you can just overrule them with a different executive order. But when you create a law, now you can't do that. That's the reason why going and creating a law takes a lot more work and a lot more cooperation than an executive order, which just takes one idea from one person. SCAS says, you sound Republican leaning. Okay, I sound Republican leaning. What is that supposed to mean? My Neutral Right said, I agree. The right needs to get comfortable. They can't afford to. It needs to not get comfortable. Excuse me. Dean said, if the Dems keep at what they have been doing, the Dem party won't exist. I don't know about that. There's a lot of people who support the Democrats. Those of you who are on the right, I'll say it again, don't get cocky. Jay Rocker said the right is absolutely getting cocky. Well, Jay Rocker, if you're not on the right, you shouldn't remind them that they're getting cocky, because it might wake them up. Heather said, how do you think the midterms will go? Well, I talked about this 2 days ago. After the response to the Charlie Kirk death, I think the Democrats took what looked like a slam dunk for them winning at least one of the two sides of Congress to now it's in question. If the midterms were this year, I'd say the Democrats ain't winning anything. I would say guaranteed Republicans keep the entire Congress. If the midterms were this November, I'd say with Charlie Kirk happening that close to the election, no way the Democrats win either side. But now there's a year away. There's a chance that the energy from right now might die down by next year. So Democrats still have a fighting chance, but their chances are worse now after their response to Charlie Kirk than it was before Charlie Kirk. And I don't mean all the Democrats. I mean some very prominent ones. Ilhan Omar, what's the other woman's name? AOC, and several others. And they are very prominent with big voices. They have not helped the Democratic cause with the way they responded to Charlie Kirk. Gary Gray said Democrat Party is horrible because they got the progressives in and it destroyed them. Well, the progressives are running their party. So I get what you're saying. Angelica said humility goes a long way. That's why I don't get cocky. Yeah, if you are a Republican listening to this or you're MAGA listening to this, do not get cocky thinking that just because MAGA is running shit right now that MAGA is going to keep running shit for the next 3 years or into 2028 and beyond. Don't think that is a slam dunk. It's not a slam dunk. Shorty said, why they are not crimes and work hard and are good people, that's the end. I don't care if you work hard and you're a good person. If you don't have proper documentation, you got to leave. Shorty, how many different ways can you come up with to say the same thing? If you don't have proper documentation, you got to leave. You could be a good person without proper documentation. Okay, great. Thank you, good person. You got to go. Yeah, said, I probably voted for Trump and I will do it again. Fair enough. I don't think he's running again, but that's it. Why is the truth so hard? Said, none of it is legal. The illusion of choice through vote is just that, an illusion. What are you referring to there? Bean said, illegal entry makes you a criminal. That is correct. Uncle Trey said, why are they not sending to they right homes? What do you mean? Well, first of all, I get what you're trying to say here, Uncle Trey, but can you write in like legible, proper English when you're commenting in here? I'm going to read this one. They're not getting sent to their right homes. They are getting sent to their right homes. They get sent back to where they came from. That's the law. The law is we find out where you're from. We send you back to where you came from. Now, what happens is you can claim, I don't want to go back to where I came from because I fear for my life or I fear violence if I go back home. That's a legal due process right that a detainee has that don't send me back to Brazil because I'm afraid for my life if I go back to Brazil. So then the government will say, okay, you don't want to go back to Brazil where you're from, so we'll send you over here. Then you can say, well, I don't want to go there. Okay, we'll send you over here. I don't want to go there. We'll send you over there. This is what that Maryland man has been trying to do. He said this about 22 different countries. So we're going to send him back to El Salvador. He said, I fear for my life, I'll go to El Salvador. Then they said, all right, we'll send you here. He said the same thing again. Then they said another place. He did it 22 times, places he doesn't want to be sent because he fears for his life. So it's almost like he's playing a game with the system. The problem is they're eventually going to send him somewhere and they're going to overrule these claims and he's going to get sent somewhere random that he doesn't know the language or anything. He's going to be stuck there. That's what's actually going to happen. So Uncle Trey, your question is a loaded question. It's actually a false frame. Chris said, exactly. People forget breaking the law to begin with. Yes, exactly. Jimmy said, people overall like structure in government. Democrats have no structure. Well, they have a structure. Right now, they have no identity is what they don't have. They have no identity. Nothing but blood. And Deborah Twitty, thanks for the follow and the share. All in said, the law is the law. That's right. Uncle Trey said they're kidnapping people, not even sending them to the right place. Uncle Trey, cut it out. All right, you got to come with, first of all, I need you to write in proper English here, and you got to come with some higher level intellect comments if you want to engage here. You got to give me something better than that. And stop spamming my comments, Uncle Trey. We have to kick you out. Karina said the Dems would have deported after the first time they committed crime, they would have had a better chance. If they would just enforce the law, they have a better chance. Shorty said the problem is we need the immigrants. Brazil don't need you. We don't need the immigrants. We need the legal citizens. The immigrants who want to become citizens is what we need. And the immigrants that you're talking about, I don't know. Are you talking legal or illegal? So, Shorty, you're kind of talking out both sides of your mouth here. I don't know if you're doing it on purpose or you're not being specific because you're not quite understanding what I'm saying. I'm thinking you might be doing it on purpose, but I might be wrong. Because I can say Fetterman does, LOL, I don't know about spelling. Okay, fair enough. I know who Fetterman is. Rowa, thanks for the follow. Josephine said, how does she know they were illegal? Who are you talking about? Ashley said, illegal immigrants are unable to work, correct? No, it depends. You can get a job getting paid under the table, so you don't have to be officially documented by the government that you're working there because you don't have a social security number, but you can get a job and work without a paycheck. So if I do landscaping, I can go roll past the Home Depot, pick up a bunch of dudes who want to work for the day, and I say, look, I'll pay each one of y'all $100 a day. We're just going to do landscaping all day. All right, you going to cut the grass, you trim the hedges, you bag up the cut grass and put it in the bag and put the bags over there for the garbage man. I'll pay each one of you $100 in cash at the end of the day. I win because I would have to pay an American person maybe $200 a day for that work. And I don't have to pay employment taxes because I hired you under the table. And technically, I can make my business look like I don't even have any employees because I'm just paying you by the day. And you get work, you get paid, you make some money, and you don't have to pay taxes on that money. That's tax-free money that you just made. So it benefits me as the business owner if I want to hire under the table, and it benefits you and the government doesn't get a cut. The government doesn't like it because they don't get a cut. Technically, you're not supposed to do that. Technically, you're breaking the rules and the law if you do that as a business owner, but people do it all the time. Government doesn't have enough resources to hunt down every single person who's doing it. That's the reason why it still happens. So, Ashley, yes, you can work when you're here illegally, but you have to do it under the table. So you're not officially working, quote unquote. Bull, thanks for the follow. Shauna McD says she has no clue how it works. Now, I think she does have a clue. Ashley, thanks for the follow. Jay Rocker said Vance is good with the lying on national TV. Well, every politician lies on national TV, Jay Rocker. You can't name a single one who never lied on national TV. They all do it, and they all do it the same amount.
Have some more chicken. Have some more pie. It doesn't matter if it's boiled or fried.
Terry Alvarez says, I'm an American citizen now. The whole process took 7 years. That's what I've heard. Those are the kind of numbers I usually hear. Anywhere from 2 to 20 years to become a citizen. Casey said, I can see people liking Vance more than Trump in the future because he's a great speaker. Yes, Vance is a very good speaker. Allman said, we need common sense back, and that can't be taught. I think it can be taught. I think you have to have a sea change in the way people are living their lives, like families, 2 parents at home. That's what we need. Tan Bigia said, I'll be scared of you in politics. Well, I'm not getting in politics, so you don't have to be scared. Paula Tuck said, you should be in politics. No, I shouldn't. Nicole McMullen said, I only voted for Trump because he is the lesser evil. Fair enough. Your vote, your choice. That's the way it works, right? Your vote, your choice. Christian, thanks for the follow. Jay Rocker said, what did Floyd do? He was detained and subdued already. Did you see the full video, Jay Rocker? Do you know what he did? They tried to put him in a cop car. He was fighting. He would not get in the cop car. He was kicking his legs, and they couldn't get him in the car. And the 4 of those officers together weren't strong enough to get him in the car. Now, in another situation, a bigger, stronger cop or a couple of bigger, stronger cops would have beat his ass and forced him into that car and closed the door while he was in the back. They weren't strong enough to do it, so they had to let him get out because they couldn't get him in. So they put him on the ground. He asked to be put on the ground, and that's when the cop kneeled on top of him because, again, that was in the employee handbook. Now, when he went to trial, they said it wasn't in the handbook. The handbook got updated. That was outdated, and then his bosses fronted on him, the white cop, and said that was not part of the training. They fronted on him, and they wouldn't allow that evidence to be submitted in court, and he ends up getting 23 years. So what did Floyd do? He did something stupid. Jay Rocker, you ever been accosted by a cop? Did you physically fight back from getting in the cop car? Okay, so since I doubt your answer is yes, then you know what he did. Bean said, put a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach. Yeah, that's before that day. I know about that, but yes. Uncle Trey said, our neighborhoods are police different, and we are pulled over most of the time, no reason. So Uncle Trey, clearly you're capable of writing in legible English, so thank you for doing that. Said, our neighborhoods are police different. We are pulled over most of the time, no reason. Well, how often do you get pulled over? How often let's say, the average everyday person pulled over? I say average everyday person doesn't get pulled over that often at all. And even if you do get pulled over, do you do anything that causes the situation to escalate like George Floyd did? And our neighborhoods are police different. It depends on what type of neighborhood we're talking. I understand. And your behavior could be police different too. I get it. I understand. I've been pulled over before. I've been pulled over more in the hood than I get pulled over in the suburbs. I understand what you're saying. Even if I get pulled over, though, I have never escalated the situation. Tracy Skipper said, appreciate your perspective. Thank you. Pink Heart Vibe said, Dre coming with facts. Thank you. Chrissy Joe said, if people knew science, they know he died from cardiac arrest raising his blood pressure from drugs. Well, they weren't going to let that fly because the city of Minneapolis would have got burned to the ground had that cop gotten off. That I believe. Carla, Indiana said, Dre Baldwin's the TikTok GOAT. Thank you. Goji Boy, thank you for the follow. Jay Rocker said he was on the care. They put him back up. I think you meant to say he was in the car. No, he wasn't. Watch the full video. He was halfway in the car. He was claiming he couldn't breathe. He was claiming that he was claustrophobic. He asked to be pulled out of the car. So then they got him out of the car because they couldn't keep him in the car and under control. They pulled him out because he asked to be pulled out, and they were too weak to stop him from fighting the way he was fighting. That's how he ended up on the ground. He asked to be on the ground. That's how he ended up on the ground. DJ Dynamite said, George Floyd disciples hate facts that don't fit their narrative. Well, they were fed a narrative, and it's a very emotional one. It's hard to get people off of that. Tabengia said, I'd love to understand why there's people and what happened to George Floyd Why does people add what happened to George Floyd into politics? Because it became a big story, a big political story. Jay Rocker said he was in the car. He asked to get pulled out. I already answered that. Jasmine Carter said, third time I agree with you. All people must obey laws. Want to deal with ICE if obeying laws. All right, great. Well, thank you for agreeing with me 3 times. Our Philly Inc. said it's still murder either way. Well, adjudication, yes. It was adjudicated as a murder. Do I think that's what actually happened? I don't think so. I don't think that's what happened. I think it was a combination of whatever he had in his system and him being on the ground and him getting himself all excited over the whole situation. I think all of that contributed more to his death than anything that the cop did, the guy who was kneeling on his back, shoulder, neck, whatever you want to call it. I think that contributed more. But politics demanded that somebody take the blame for that, because had that white cop gotten found innocent, the city of Minneapolis would have ceased to exist. So it was basically, let's trade this white cop's next 23 years of his life in order to keep this city from burning to the ground, because that city would have burned to the ground. And a bunch of other American cities, mostly black, would have burned to the ground that day and the following week had that white cop not been convicted. So I think it was just a trade-off is what I think. All right, Philly. Divanana, thanks for the follow. Amy Vivian said, you speak the truth. Thank you. We're going to go a little bit longer here today. I'll take a few more comments, folks, and we'll wrap this up. Miss B said, the government has invested $26 trillion since the 1950s to improve the black community. Yes, well, the problem is the government is very inefficient with money. So even though they have tried, they have failed. And a lot of black people don't see the results of it. So black people are like, well, that hasn't helped us. But the government is like, well, we did try to help you. The problem is the government is not good at helping. So now black people are like, give us reparations. The government is like, well, have you not seen all the stuff we've done? And the black people are like, no, we don't really see it because we don't see the results of it. And then it becomes this whole 2 people pointing at each other like, y'all didn't do anything. Y'all didn't do anything. And it ends up in a stalemate. It's the reason why I don't think there will ever be cash reparations paid to black people, even though if anyone's able to achieve it, I would gladly collect my check. But do I think it's going to happen? I don't. Ashley said, and they don't have rioting for enforcing their laws. Yes, Peanut, thank you for the share. Nicole McMullen said, you want to know the truth? Half the world is just crazy. I think you mean half the world. Yes. Why is the truth so hard? And the phase, thank you for the follows. A few more comments here, folks, and then we will wrap this one up. Where was I in the comments? Oh, we got a lot of comments here today. I'm not going to get through all these comments. So sorry if I missed your comment here, but I gotta go through a few of these so we can get done. Where am I? Yeah, we got a lot of comments here today. A lot of comments. A lot of comments. Okay. So Leslie said, illegal immigrants have caused my family to go bankrupt. How so? How'd that happen? Tiffany Watkins said, Trump isn't doing anything Obama didn't do when it comes to immigration, yet Dems are up in arms. Basically, Obama did more. Duke's mom said, when you hand somebody a phone and put them up in a hotel and feed them, they think they're entitled. Well, certain people, yes. User Miss Priss said, no other country has open borders. This is true. Shannon Burt said, ICE agents wear masks because the left is constantly threatening them. Yes, this is true. Well, they're creating threats. Shannon Burt, thanks for the follow. Jay Rocker said, that's a problem. Hypocrisy. The rules should apply to everyone, not just your friends. What are you referring to? User and Flight Medic Dave, thanks for the follows. All right, I can't read every comment, folks. I'm skipping through so we can get through all these. Arthur Buckley says, soon immigrants will run the U.S. Look at Minnesota. That's the way it's looking right now. Arthur Buckley, you're correct. The way it's looking right now is America's going to be brown. It's not going to be black or white. It's going to be brown. Jay Rocker said, wow, well said, Dre. Thank you. I don't know what you're referring to, but thank you. I focus, Arthur said, I mean in office. Oh, you're talking about the politicians. Well, I was talking about the people. But the politicians, you're right, too. Karina said, I was saying because Lincoln and Jocelyn's murders, for instance, had jobs and family, so it doesn't matter. Fair, good point. Karina said, all undocumented got to go. Yes, that's the law. Again, it's not even any of our personal opinions. It's just the law. Carly said, why don't immigrants fight against the very country they want to leave if it's so bad? Well, America's offering you free entry, and there's a lot of opportunity in America. I mean, there's a reason why this is called the land of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity here for upward mobility that in other countries, if you're born at the bottom, you stay there. So America offers upward mobility that other countries don't offer. Heather said, Democrats paint themselves as morally superior. This is true. Shorty said, well, who are going to pick the crops and take care of the elderly and so on when all the undocs are gone? Well, there are people who are not undocumented who take care of the elderly, shorty. Really, is that what you came up with? And pick the crops. Pretty soon, there's going to be a robotic machine controlled by artificial intelligence. So, who is going to be? Actually, your better question should be, what is going to pick the crops? It's not going to be a human. Dana Pecom said, "You're intelligent. Trust me, they'd be interested in you." All right. Well, they better come call me. I'm not calling them. They got to call me. That's the position I'm in professionally these days. Nicole McMullen says, supposedly some Democrats switch sides because of all the celebrating death of Kirk. I've heard. ABCD said, are you a liberal? I'm okay with either because I'm in the middle. I am not a liberal. Chris said, why wouldn't you consider yourself a conservative? Well, one reason is I don't like to put myself in any group, first of all. And I don't want to, if I say I'm a conservative, then that means anything that conservatives, quote unquote, want to come up with, that means I got to be along with it or I'd be going against the grain of the group. So I'd rather maintain my independence and just offer my opinions. Because what do I gain by considering myself a conservative? I'm not knocking anybody who is a conservative, but what do I gain? I'd rather just stay where I'm at, which is completely objective and unattached to anybody, and I can just offer my opinion as I wish. Because if I say I'm a conservative, then I criticize conservatives, and conservatives are going to be more mad at me for criticizing because I'm supposed to be one of them. So I'd rather just stay right where I'm at and just offer my perspective from where I am. Karina said, turning point is values, healthy dialogue, not just conservatism. Fair enough. I need to go to one of their events. I should have went when Charlie was still alive, but I will try to find my way to a TP USA event, see what's going on. Gigi Joe said, turning point will welcome me. That's the point of their existence. I'm sure they will welcome me. I don't disagree with that. I just never made it to one of their events, but I did want to see what they were about. I've seen some videos. I've seen some people speaking. Who else is speaking there? I know Candace has spoke there. Megyn Kelly spoke there. My guy Zuby has spoken there. I think Zuby spoke at the TP USA event, but I've never been to one. So I want to go to one and see what it's really about. Joey Bollington said, your opinions run well into the conservative side. Fair enough. I believe I have some opinions that are conservative. If I say if you are undocumented, you got to leave the country, is that a conservative opinion? Of course it is. I'm not saying I don't have any opinions that are conservative. I have a liberal opinion would be I'm not completely against abortion. So isn't that a liberal opinion? So I'm not on any side. Dan said executive orders are temporary, not law. Yes, exactly. That's the point. Jay Rocker said the problem is Trump is bypassing Congress checks and balances. Well, executive orders exist for the very reason that a president can do something without going through checks and balances. That's the reason they exist. Donald Trump did not create executive orders, Jay Rocker. So that's a false frame that you're giving there. Loaded statement. You're making it seem like Trump came up with this out of nowhere, like Barack Obama and Joe Biden didn't also use executive orders when they did. Barb Shibley said, you sound right-meaning because you make so much sense and logical. Yeah, exactly.
I like your funny words, Magic Man.
Bean said, not getting cocky, just seeing their numbers dropping like crazy. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. User said, you're exactly the kind of person who needs to attend Turning Point event. You have common sense. Well, what I need to attend for, to listen to them talk, that means I should be speaking at a Turning Point event. I shouldn't be sitting in the audience listening. Ed McKinney said, good versus evil, what's going on, not right or left. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Heck said, Trump is enforcing laws already on the books, not bypassing Congress. Right. The executive orders Trump put in place for the border are just telling people to actually do their jobs. That's what the executive orders were. Do your job and enforce the laws. Not just know that we have them, actually enforce them. That's all he asked them to do, or told them to do. Great Gator Boy said, that was pretty funny. I don't care how nice you are, you got to go. Yeah, because that's the law. Being nice ain't got nothing to do with the law. But Heck said, Trump is enforcing laws Biden ignored. Isn't the fact that he didn't protect our borders treason? Well, some people frame it that way. I get what you're saying. Bean said, leave and come back legally before they find you. Yeah, exactly. Dan said, we don't deliver. Well, the problem is coming back legally is hard. It's hard to come here legally because everybody can't get in. The United States is pretty picky when it comes to who we let in. Not everybody gets in who's trying to get in. That's the reason why people sometimes come illegally, because if they try to do it the right way, they wouldn't make it, or they would have to wait a long time. Any of you lived in another country and you try to come to the United States and get a visa, it's basically like a lottery. All right? Not everybody wins. Some people just don't get chosen to come here. Even if you're trying to come here, you don't get chosen. That's the problem. Right, so I'm going to take a few more comments here, folks. We won't go more than 10 more minutes and then we'll be done. Jay Rocker says, Supreme Court said don't deport. Trump ignored. Oh, well, then another court said something else. Then they went back to the court, and there's been a whole bunch of back and forth. Darren Beach said, let the people that want the immigrants come live at their house. Yeah, they don't want that. They don't want to go that far. Will said, when I moved to Germany for work, I had to do it legally, apply for a visa, check in every month. Yeah, exactly. Jasmine said, great show. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Well, thank you, Jasmine. Glad you enjoyed yourself. Will, thank you for the follow. Anastasia said, Democrats being pro-legal immigration just want cheap labor. They still love enslaving people. Well, listen, let's be clear. Republicans will like cheap labor too. Republicans own businesses too. They'll take the cheap labor. At the same time, there's like this balance that has to be struck. Somebody asked, they don't have a name, said, do you play Call of Duty? I do not play video games. Shorty said, not on purpose. I'm not malicious. I mean, I like the undock in Cali working on farms. Fair enough. I don't think I was just proposing that maybe you were, maybe you weren't. You said like the undocumented in Cali working on farms. Yes, I get it. If you're not doing anything wrong, you're not hurting anybody, then you get caught and deported out of the country. I understand how it can feel unfair, quote unquote, but you got to remember that the law is you shouldn't have been here in the first place. So it could feel unfair, and people could say it is unfair, but it's not unfair because the law says you weren't supposed to be here in the beginning. And that's still the law. Master Yeet Man said, the labor market will clear regardless of caste system. Democrats pitch is irrational and dishonest. Great Gator Boy said, how many illegals entered? Do you know number of deportation? It was estimated 12 to 20 million during the Biden administration. The exact number we'll never know. That's the whole problem. We don't know. Dean Dangerous said, you're lying and saying you're not MAGA. Why are you trying to put this MAGA thing on me?
Strawberry cheesecake.
Karina said, Vance is more composed and doesn't ramble on. Well, Trump did win 2 elections, and he won 3 nominations. So we can't frame Vance's position as if it is actually an improvement on Trump. I don't think there'll ever be another Trump. Will said, it took me a year to get my work visa, had 3-month visas and 4 times while waiting. All right, a few more comments, folks, then we're done. Dean Danger said, kneeling on the neck is the book. Well, it depends on where you think he kneeled. And secondly, yes, it was in the manual. It was shown in the documentary called The Falling in Minneapolis. The Fall of Minneapolis. It was shown in a manual that the cop, Derek Chauvin, had. And they wouldn't allow that to be entered into evidence during the trial because they said it was updated. But then when his bosses got put on the stand, they said, was this ever in the manual? They said no, and then it wasn't allowed to be entered into evidence, so it couldn't discredit them. So the guy got railroaded. I mean, again, whether you think he did something bad or good, he got railroaded. There's no argument to that. Nicole McMullen said, Vance will probably get the next 2 terms. And I heard a rumor Kirk's wife might be running. All right. Okay, you all who are on the political right, y'all just counting your chickens before they hatch. You got to win the election to get the next 2 terms. Jay Rocket said, I'm black and I've never been in trouble with the police. Right, exactly. Me either. I mean, I've been pulled over before. I've been ticketed before, but never anything crazy with the cops. Ricky DeRuler, thanks for the follow. Thank you, Bean. By the way, go to the number in my profile and text me the word live. You will get a link to the page that has links to all of my books. I'll tell you about them before I answer a few more comments. ThirdDayBook.com. This book is all about how you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. Every professional has days like this when you don't feel like working, but you have to work. This book subtitle is The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. The book is free. Just cover the shipping. Go to ThirdDayBook.com. Again, the book's free. Just cover the shipping. ThirdDayBook.com. I'll put it. I know y'all can't see. I know it's mirrored, but I'll leave it up there anyway. ThirdDayBook.com is how you get this book free. It's all spelled out. Third Day and the word book. Dean said, asking, well, why are you pulled over so much? Insinuates it's their fault. Well, first of all, I didn't even say that, so that's a straw man.
Strawberry cheesecake.
My question was, how often does the average person get pulled over? And I'm from the neighborhood that guy is talking about, Dean. I don't think you are. So maybe you should stay out of this one. Jaslyn Carter said, I've been approached by a policeman. It's frightening. I put both hands outside the car. Well, you don't need to be frightened. But I understand if you were frightened, but that's not the cop's fault. Eric D. Raven said, you're awesome, sir. Thank you. You're welcome. Ashley said, first time seeing you, loving everything you say, spitting facts. Thank you, Ashley. The question was, where was I? Few more comments, everybody. I think it was Bean said, "Why do Democrats burn cities and looting?" That's not all Democrats. That's certain people. Often it's black people who do that. Chris Gissett said, "You're a voice of reason and logic." Thank you. You're welcome. Connie Moore said, "I think making a statement about the elderly and the crops is a racist statement." I don't think it was meant that way. Popular P said, "Do you agree sensationalism is much too embraced to propagate lies?" Well, sensationalism works to get people's attention. So I understand the game. So even if you don't think it's good, it's never going away because it works. It works to get people's attention. Jay Rocker said, "People are switching sides to Dems because they see the current state of the country." And I don't know about that. But I'm sure there are some. I mean, it's 350 million people in the country. So there are some people doing pretty much anything. Carla Indiana said, "Officer Tatum has spoken TP USA." I'm sure he has. That makes sense. Master Yeet Man says, "Undocumented." See, undocumented is one of those words that they made up to make it sound different than what it actually is. It's illegal. If you don't have proper documentation, you're in a place that requires documentation. It means you're breaking the rules. And in the country, you're breaking the law. Jay Rocker said, "Why is everyone trying to convince you to become a Republican recruiting hard?" Well, I don't know if they're recruiting. I think there are some people in here who actually are Republicans and conservatives, and they appreciate my approach. And I take it as a compliment. They think my approach would actually be a positive for their side. But even where I'm at, without calling myself a conservative, the things that I'm saying these days with the things that I see the Democrats doing, I'm already helping the conservatives. I'm not even trying to. I'm just telling you objectively what I see. And right now, Democrats have lost their minds. I've been saying this for the last year. So I'm already helping the conservatives without even trying to help the conservatives because the Democrats are doing things that objectively make no sense. So again, I don't even have to be a conservative to help the conservatives. The Democrats are helping them too with their behavior. Ryan FL said, "I don't think we can be a lawful country if people are allowed to benefit from breaking laws." I would agree with that. Wifey Tips said Megyn Kelly spoke for TP USA in Virginia. I thought that was her tour. Wifey Tips, I think that's Megyn Kelly's tour. That wasn't a TP USA tour. That's Megyn Kelly's tour. And I want to see her. She's actually going to be in Miami. Because I was thinking about should I maybe go to that event, but I'm actually going to be traveling the exact day she's going to be in Miami. I'm not going to be in town. So I'm probably going to miss it. But I would go and see the event that she's going to be speaking at. I forget who else is going to be there when she speaks in Miami. Shorty said, "Thank you. Can agree with something on either side. I like a lot of things from young George Bush." All right, fair enough. Bean said, "I wish common sense could be taught." Well, it is. It's taught by parents in the home. Now, everybody has a different idea of what common sense means. Those are two different things. So, I mean, not two different things, but it could be a million different things. Ron Resser, thank you for the follow. Angie said, "May I ask you, do I call Donald Trump a Zio?" And thanks. Are you talking about Israel? I don't know. I don't even look into geopolitics that much to really talk about it, but a lot of people go hard on that stuff. I'm not one of them. So I don't really have much. Lola said, "Do you have the books in audio?" Absolutely. Every one of my books is in audio book format, as well as physical format, as well as digital format. And again, you get this one at thirddaybook.com. Ryan said, "I stole a car from the back lot and before it was later caught, I wouldn't get to keep it." Oh, if I stole a car. I was about to say, you telling on yourself stealing cars? Dan the Kai Man, thank you for the follow. Animal said it would be the fifth day if it was my book. Why would it be the fifth day? Chris said, "I think the last time I was pulled over was 8 years ago and I was speeding." Yeah, it depends on where you are. It depends on what kind of car you're driving. It depends on how the cops are. Like here in South Florida, you don't get pulled over for speeding. Very rarely. You got to do something kind of crazy to get pulled over here. I speed all the time. I haven't been pulled over in like 10 years. Do I follow Jeff Mead? I don't know who Jeff Mead is, so no, I do not. Thank you, Marky Man. Appreciate you. Barb Shriveley, thank you. Chris said, "Turning Point was in VA the other day." So maybe it was in conjunction with Megyn Kelly, but I know Megyn Kelly had that on her website. That was her tour. It was like the Megyn Kelly tour, but let's check since now people are talking about it. Let's say Megyn Kelly tour. Because I was just looking at this the other day. So the Megyn Kelly tour, it's called Megyn Kelly Live. So coast to coast. Oh, okay, no. So you all got it right. It was TP USA. So she was at a TP USA event yesterday. Her tour doesn't start yet. Her tour doesn't start till next month. Her tour is in October. The first date is in October in Texas. Doing a bunch of dates in Texas. Then she's in New York. Then she comes to Jacksonville. This is in Miami. Yeah, the day she's in Miami, I'm not going to be in town, so I'm going to miss that one. And she's going to be there with Eric Trump, Piers Morgan, and Callie Means. I actually would go to that event. I will go to that event. Piers Morgan is interesting. Eric Trump, I haven't heard too much. Callie Means is interesting. I will go to that, but unfortunately, I'm going to miss it. And it's probably at night, too. I don't really like going to events at night. What time does this event start? Let's see. What time is it? Doesn't say what time. It's at 7:30 p.m. Actually, I probably wouldn't go to this event. I'll watch it on YouTube. So, again, ThirdDayBook.com. Yeah, my battery's about to be done. I'm at 10%. ThirdDayBook.com. Everybody get this book free. Text the word LIVE, LIVE, to my number, 305-384-6894. We'll send you a link to a page that has links to all of my books you can get for free. This book, The Third Day, you can get for free. Mirror of Motivation, this black book you see behind me, you can get that for free. Sales Discipline System, you can get this book for free. We got a bunch of stuff we give away for free. You can get in my text community. I just gave you the number to get that. You can get into my coaching programs. We got different options for that. My Power Presence Protocol, which is all about command of the room, energy, aura, the way you walk into a space. You get into that program. And we got plenty of other things. Just get into my world. Again, just text me at the number you see in my bio on TikTok. On my bio on TikTok, there's a number. Text me at that number. Text the word LIVE, LIVE. You'll be in my texting community. The replays of these lives are always on my YouTube. I'm also on Instagram, so follow me on Instagram. Those of you who are Instagram users. If you're on Facebook, my Facebook page is /WorkOnYourGameUniversity. If you're on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn page is @DreAllDay, and I'm also on Rumble. So I appreciate everybody who came in. Shout out to the new people who came in today who heard me for the first time. Shout out to the new followers. Thank you to my regulars and moderators for keeping the room under control. Thank you to the dissenters and the people who disagree. We like the disagreement. All right, the disagreement is good because we get to use the soundboard and play our sounds here. So we welcome disagreement. You can disagree in here. You do not have to agree with anything that I say. You can push back on things that I say. As long as you come with something that makes some sense, then I will engage with it. Even if it's wrong, I will still engage with it. So I appreciate everybody who coming in. We do these live streams Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern. So today's Thursday. We'll be back on here tomorrow at 8 a.m. Eastern. I usually go to about 10 o'clock. I've been going overtime several days in the last couple of weeks after this Charlie Kirk situation. We've been going super long. Today, I went a little bit long in my own talking before we got to the comments. But usually, I go about an hour of content, then about an hour of comments, and we're done by 10. Sometimes we go over. Today, we went over. Most of the time, we don't. But my battery's about to be dead, so we are out of here. I'm on a couple different devices, but one of my batteries is about to die, so we'll wrap this up. I will see everybody tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you're following me on whatever app you're watching me on. Follow me on Instagram, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Make sure you send me a text, 305-384-6894 with the word LIVE, LIVE. We'll send you a link to a page that has all the links to all my free books, all my free stuff. Again, 305-384-6894. Everybody have a great Thursday. See y'all tomorrow. We out of here. Work on your game.